So I like to do it unexpectedly. All right, so we are now live on Facebook and Instagram. As always, every Sunday. I never really tell when I'm going live just because I never know myself. And that's kind of, what people want in the world. There's too many people sitting on screens with their makeup get up and all that other stuff that people just don't need. You need real people in your life. You need real genuine people who know what's going on. And there's only a handful of us. It's not many. So Derek Jonhson here. Some call me Rattletrap 1776. I see Instagram's already paused for whatever reason. But that's just the way it goes. So let's see if we can make sure that we're live over here. Let's see here. I have to go do this again. I don't know why Instagram's having issues all of a sudden. I'm not far from my Starlink. Let's see, there we go. Let's see here. See if it comes back on. If not, then we'll just keep rolling right here on Facebook. It's just the way it is, but let's see if it goes live. Let's see, it says it's still paused, reconnecting. But anyway, so I never tell people when I'm going live. This is wild. It's wild that my Starlink just is being whatever. I may have to go live again on Instagram just for the heck of it, but let's just do that now. Let's go live again on Instagram. Now that I got Starlink connected. Just bear with me, ladies and gents. All right. Do this like that. Do this like that. There we go. Wow. There we go. Now it's live again. But you need realness in the world, just like that. An interruption. You need someone who's real, who's authentic, who's genuine, not makeup, all the other stuff. Not an actual set where they're sitting there and they're just reading some little script to you that fits a timely manner. People always, I saw early on in the early days, people would go, man, if this guy can't say this in 5 or 10 minutes, he's wasting his time. That's the reason why you're in the position you're in. That's why you're in the boat you're in. It's because you think a 5-minute answer, 10-minute answer, 20 minutes is what fixes the United States of America's problems. If that were the case, then everyone really should be blamed for, well, why didn't it happen before? If that's what you think. If it's that easy, then why hasn't it done it before? So then really you could point some fingers at people and go, well, it's your fault. Especially those of you over 50 years old, it would be your fault. So, we're in a position where we're going through a transition in life where you're seeing drama and propaganda meet critical thinking, strategic thinking, and real education. Because so many people think that they have real education and they really don't. It's a man-made system. And that's why I think God put certain people in positions right now. It's not really why I think it, I know it. God put certain people in positions right now who already have everything but know that it's fake and it's a facade and it's a man-made thing. Kind of like me. I have a bachelor's degree from a major institution, University of Alabama, and then I have a master's degree in business from Colorado State University. They don't mean anything unless society deems so. They don't mean a thing other than that. They're just a piece of paper that says that I could pass a curriculum set by whom? Men. Right? Men meaning men and women. That's it. I have Billboard hits in country music. I have the top hits as far as you can go in country music. You can't go past Billboard Country Airplay. There's nothing past it, hit-wise. Nothing past it. So once you have one, and you know how the system works, that's it. Game over. So God put certain people in place, though, to show that, like President Donald John Trump, he put him there. He's an outsider. Wasn't in politics before. Also wasn't in the military. God put him there on purpose because it can't be bought. He didn't need government money because if you go by the standard of government money, $400,000 a year for the president, I mean, that's a lot of money to some people, but it's not a lot of money to someone who's worth $5 billion. All right? Then you look at congressmen and women, $174,000 a year. So if you really do the math on what they're supposed to make and only that, and if you apply integrity and principles behind it, then it should look like this. If you have a congressman or woman who was a businessman and or woman before, and they're worth more than, let's say, $1 million, right? Then they should forfeit that $174,000 a year if they want to be in politics. They should forfeit that, just like President Trump forfeited the $400,000 a year because he don't need it. So he donates that to a certain charity every year. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So it's the same thing when you have people in positions like me. I've beat every system I've been in, and I know how the system works, and I know how it operates and how it functions. And I can tell you right now, some of you still don't want to hear it, but I can tell you right now how country music works, and people will still go support that trash, rigged system. Because people still want things their way at the end of the day. You want to know what you want to know, but you don't want to hear everything else. And by integrity, you should want the whole thing cleaned out. And by integrity, you should want people who know the system, but don't play the system. Let's clean the system out. And when you got someone who knows the system, who can outline the system and say, hey, this is how it works, and this is what you're supporting, and if you're okay with supporting a system that's rigged, trash, monopoly, but a monopoly the wrong way, and you keep supporting that, you're a hypocrite. You're a bigot and a hypocrite. You can't have one system cleaned out and all these others over here looking the same as before. You should want people who know how to get in there, can't be bought, can't be compromised, who can clean the system out, set it back. Because so many people don't know that. So many people have no idea how the financial system works, how elections operate and function, ratification processes, your basic three branches of government, their functions and operations together and separate. There's so many things that people just don't know, and you're supposed to know. And you're supposed to want to know. So today I named my podcast, Why Do You Love President Trump? Now, I've got my little swear jar over here. It's a virtual swear jar, and I'm going to try not to say a four-letter word today. And I'm going to try not to say the words moron and idiot and dummy and stupid in the derogatory context. But just for the sake of while we're here, the reason why I use words like dummy, moron, stupid, ignorant, lazy, and all those, it's not to every listener that's always listening. It's to those who want to vocalize or verbalize and or comment that this is hogwash, BS, conspiracy, and all those other things. When you vocalize that, especially still claiming to be a Republican, conservative, and or a patriot, then you're no different than the worst liberal out there. Whatever you deem as worse or bad or ugly. You're no different than that. Because that's the whole subject today of this. Why do you love President Trump? And why do we have President Trump and or anything? Why do we have a president Why do we have a Congress? Why do we have courts if laws and orders don't matter? Why? So we have to have laws and orders because laws and orders are exactly what they are. They're laws and orders. They're guidelines and principles of how we are to live and how we to function in society. Because if you don't have laws and orders, then guess what happens? Then it's really going to be chaos. It's really going to be pandemonium. Because then you will have groups of people who only think for themselves. And if they ever rise up and they gain ground or whatever, however you want to look at it, and then they come after your little group, well, their group may have the weaponry to take out your little group. And your little group may actually be the more principle-based, integrity-based, good, wholesome-based group, but because they have more ammo than you and more weapons, they may take you out. That's why you always have to have a foundation and a principle, but you also have to know the ideologies of our founders at all times. That's why they put the Bill of Rights in the order of which they did. That's why they put the First Amendment first, and then the Second Amendment protects that. And then it just works its way backwards. James Madison was a genius. He was a genius in literature, but he was also a genius in ideology, and he was a genius in sequence, meaning how he wrote it. That's why every show or podcast, whatever you want to call it, that I do, I make notes. And I put them all in a sequence. I put them all in the order of which you need to know. Right? And that's how laws and orders work. So many Americans are so stuck because either innocently or blatantly follow the wrong people, the wrong ideologies, the wrong mindsets, brainwashed, captured, and controlled, manipulated, and gaslit. And everybody knows once you have a habit, or once you create a habit, you know how hard it is to break the habit. You can absolutely be tormented by your habit, but because you've done it so long, it's hard to break. So, how do you break it? You have to have the initiative. Some of it may be easier than others. Some of yours may be worse. It could be. But you just got to put your foot down and go, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. And then when you feel that urge or whatever, have an accountability person. Whether it be your partner, friend, someone that maybe would embarrass you in another way, like if they knew. But if you have a true friend, it won't really be humiliation and embarrassment. It'll just be true accountability. If you called someone and said, hey, I feel like I'm gonna drink a drink and I need you to tell me whatever. They may say, hey, don't do that, blah, 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 Oh, don't do, I can't believe you're thinking about whatever it is, right? And so many people in America have forgotten what true responsibility and accountability truly mean. See, the United States Army has warrior ethos, and they have, we have all these different things like acronyms that leadership stands for. But see, so many people just want to serve in the military to look cool, make a paycheck, benefits and all that, that they say those things just to get to those things. They'll repeat these things just to get to those things. But do they really mean what these acronyms stand for? Do they really take pride in those acronyms? Do they take pride in every single word of the acronym? There's a huge difference in saying those things and thinking you mean them on the surface than actually truly having that passion and believing in every one of those things. And we're all guilty somehow, some along the way. I mean, I'll tell you some vulnerabilities of mine. For example, I grew up in a godly home. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up with Bible-reading Christians. I grew up with that. I went to church. I heard everything. I saw people reading the Bible. I even had a Bible with my name on it. I never opened the Bible, though. I opened the Bible when I would need God. If a girlfriend broke up with you. Oh, God. That ain't how God works. Now, I ain't here to preach to you. I'm talking about me, myself. But see, everybody on their own has to come to that realization. You can't make someone come to that realization. If someone don't even believe in God, you can't make them. If someone doesn't believe in Jesus, you can't make them. They have to come to their own realization, which means you have to do what? You have to live your life based on what you think are your principles and morals and ethics and discipline and structure. You have to do that. And if you do what you're supposed to be doing, sometimes other people will see what you're doing and they'll go, man, how's he so smooth? How's he so calm? How's he so collect? How's he do this when this goes this way? How does he act this way when things go this way? Then they may ask you, hey, man, when that hit the fan over here, how'd you stay so cool, calm, collect? Then you can say, because I have this. Then you can do that. Then you can witness to them. And it wouldn't be putting it on them per se. And if every single person will do that, everywhere in your life, then stop worrying about other people. If they're not hurting or harming you, don't worry about them. No matter what they're doing. If they call you names, they laugh at you, ridicule you, mock you, you can't stop it anyway. They're going to do it anyway. Just like the people who've come after me. They're going to do it anyway. They're lying. God knows they are. So then that's when you go to your morals and your principles, but you go to your verses that you have to go look up in the Bible and make them applicable to you, like I've done. No weapon formed against me will prosper. God will exalt you in due time. So President Trump was called here at this appointed time. He was put in that position. And God uses some people sometimes that you least expected. That's why so many liberals and Democrats have the low-level hanging fruit, not the ones being used as pawns in this operation, but the low-level hanging fruit make a mockery, ridicule every day of President Trump. But boy, if we could hang up their clothes on the line and judge them, they wouldn't be in the photo. They wouldn't be in the picture. They wouldn't be on social media if we could take all their stuff and air it out. They wouldn't like it. They'd be exposed. But see, so many people that are in the darkness, they can't stand the light. So therefore, they're going to do what? They're going to come after the light harder sometimes. But the more the light keeps shining, and the more people who keep growing and coming to the light, then that darkness is going to get smaller, smaller, and smaller. That's why every single person does have a role and a responsibility with what's going on right now. So it's just this way. When you fool yourself saying, how do I know who to listen to and who to trust? Well, too many of you, I can tell you right now, are listening to too many lips and lungs moving out there. You're listening to too many people. That's the downfall with social media. Social media is good when it's good, but when it's bad, it's ugly. And too many people, most are civilians, all right, who don't know anything about military. Most are civilians who also have medium to low IQ. Most are civilians who just want a name and a face, and they want to say that they did this first or they said this first. That's what most of them are. Now, I do believe, yes, that civilians should know everything, should be. But there's a huge difference in knowing things versus acting like you're somebody with some kind of quote-unquote intel, which I hate that word. Outside of the military, I loathe that word. There are so many people who think that they have intel just because they read something on Google that they thought someone else didn't read, and then they take it, make it theirs, and then put it out to you as if it's new or something. It's not. All right? It just don't work that way. So there's a lot of confusion out there simply because of that reason right there. A lot of confusion off of that. Paused again on Instagram. Well, we're having some issues today. So must be all over the target. That's all I can say. So, yeah. I'll just go live again on Instagram another time because this is not working. And I want to make sure Facebook's strength is good. So, there's that. So, too many people moving their lips. It's going to get you in trouble. All right, you got to picture this. Let's say you're out in the desert, right, and you had a guy named Moses with you. But let's just fast forward to 2025 as you were in the desert and you had a guy named Moses with you, but you had all these others over here going, listen to me, follow me. I know how to get out of here. Well, in 2025, if you put everything today in today's spectrum with what's going on in the world, like there'd just be 2 or 3 people following one person this way and 2 or 3 people following someone that way, and then next thing you know, you wouldn't see some of them again because they were in the desert and they went further into the desert. And then they did what? They didn't have any water, so they did what? They died. So there's too many people who are listening to so many people who just want a name and a face and popularity. Versus looking at someone like me who you didn't know before August 24, 2022. Then all of a sudden, boom, I come out of nowhere. But then I didn't build a page up. If you look at the dates of all my pages, I established all of my accounts and pages after I went viral on social media. Except for Telegram, I'd already had it, but I had 2 followers. I can prove that. Screenshot. Timestamps don't lie. And I know who the 2 followers are and were. All right? So if you look, and then of course True Social, it was established before I went viral, but there was a waiting list and a few other things, and I had I think 20 followers on there because of music. So no one was following me because of what I talk about. No one. And no one was sharing it. And then I didn't have the Facebooks. And I didn't have X, which old school Twitter. So if you look at things, I didn't grow a page. And I'm not knocking people who have. Kudos to them if they grew it from here all the way up. Kudos. But I didn't grow my pages. And then, here's this guy. Didn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. So there's a huge difference. So why do you love President Trump? Right? Why do you love President Trump? That's what we're getting to. Why do you love President Trump? You supported him to begin with. A lot of you loved him to begin with, but I've seen a lot of people who added me on my personal Facebook, which I still have a personal Facebook page, and I see people trashing him daily. People, why'd you add me? The only reason that you added me on Facebook is because you had heard about me via military. No other reason. My original Facebook was deleted. So the Facebook I'm using now, every person on there that's a friend on there was because added me because of what's going on. So that's how I know. It's not hardly any of my family are on there. So that's how I know. And so many people have jumped ship. Now that may not be you listening and watching. It may not be you. And more than likely, it's more who are still on board versus those who aren't. But if you're on board, then you're on board. We still have to reach out and get those who aren't. That's what we still have to be fighting for. That's why my podcasts are more geared towards people who haven't heard, who should hear, who need to leave all this other behind. There's no other reason why President Trump will be chosen except to be different. There's no other reason. And when you make that applicable, then you study the dash, 45-47, which I always keep right here where you can see. All right, 45-47. When you know that, and then you so you take those two things, you take, okay, why else would they choose him? Then the 45-47, which he put on the ball cap April the 2nd, 2023. So he was claiming 47 a year and 7 months, 17, before the actual 47 voting process. So when you take all those things, there's no other reason. There's no other reason. So, like all his quotes and sayings, the best is yet to come, and follow the money. We have it all, we call them all. If you just think those are all hot air and just sayings, then you might as well just go on over to the liberal side. Just go on over. Just be exactly what you look like you're projecting. Because they're blind. They don't even talk about that stuff, but you will still fit in more with them versus saying you're a President Trump supporter and or you're all about this nation and our foundation and our ideologies because you don't act like it. You want to be a patriot, act like it. That ain't up one day, down the next, up one day, down the next. No matter what's happening. It's giving it hell every single day. And if it's your worst day, then you should give it hell even more. So how do you know? Well, did you know how the swamp grew? That's a better question. Do you know how the swamp grew and developed? The swamp that President Trump calls the swamp, it grew and developed because people don't know anything about the ideologies, the foundation, the origin, and the history, plus the operations and the functions of the three branches of government separately and together, the president, the vice president, etc. Just simple knowing what you're supposed to know. That's how the swamp grew. Laws on paper read neutral as possible. The laws of this land read as neutral as possible for a reason. They're good when they're good guys and gals are in control of them, and they read perfect and they're applied perfectly. But when the swamp, the bad guys and gals get a hold of it, what they do is they read it perfectly. If it ever was getting loose that, they did something, they would get on TV and gaslight you and manipulate people on the little tiny segments of the news outlets, tiny little segments, 2 and 3 minute portions, but nobody went and did the critical thinking, strategic thinking behind the scenes. Nobody meaning as a whole. Groups as a whole. The way it's supposed to operate, we the people, from the bottom up. That's why this had to be a top-down operation, because so many people on the bottom can't even name the three branches of government. But want to whine, complain, gripe, fuss, kid, argue, everything, something they don't even know how it operates. And that's why I sound like a broken record weekly, on podcasts weekly, talking about the same subjects weekly, because so many people still want to be spoon-fed. Don't want to take time out of the day. Okay, yes, you should be hiking, golfing, fishing, doing whatever more, but then sometimes you got to sacrifice those to do what? Read, study, comprehend. This is a unique part of history. The 45-47 is unique. It won't happen again. Oh, please God, not anytime soon. Please don't happen again. Because people like me, even though I'm on a tiny, tiny little notch, but all of us tiny little notches add up all the way up to the commanders in the war room. But even people like me on my little tiny little level, I'm praying, please God, don't let this happen again. We got to deal with so much stupidity, ignorance, and all this, it's just as tough for the operators as it is for the people trying to comprehend. Because operators know who the bad guys and gals are, all right? And it's an operation. It's a sting operation. It's a strategic operation. All kinds of warfare taking place. All kinds of warfare, which means you got to go study all kinds of warfare, comprehend those, be able to identify those, Anything clandestine or covert, you won't know about it until they're ready for you to know about it, which is what I do as well. Dissect it for you going, oh, well, that would have been a clandestine operation. Now they're just letting you know about it. That would have been a covert operation. Now they're letting you see it. Overt operations are easy because they're out in the open. They're for you to see. So you got to be able to escape drama mindset and get into real skill sets. If you want to know what's going on. If you don't, then you're wasting your time, period, with anybody and anything. I mean, if you don't want to find someone like me and read and study what I provide you via .gov and .mil sites that all tie together and outline the 45-dash service, why would you want to go over to some drama fed if you don't care about the whole application? It just means you love drama. You love propaganda, which is what the swamp was based on. So therefore, you cannot love President Trump and love drama at the same time, because he was sent to eliminate drama, propaganda, the swamp, journalists that think they're real journalists. That's the whole purpose in the 45-47 is to rid all of the swamp, to drain it, which means you got to change your way of thinking. You have to learn to think critical, strategic, and then reset what you think is your education. And I don't mean that derogatory. Again, I have a master's degree. Doesn't mean a dang thing. It don't mean a thing. Do I use it daily? Not really. I'm not in a corporate seat. No, I don't use it at all. So if laws don't matter, then that means that you'd be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, without any accountability, punishment, or justice. Well, most of the people out there are yelling, nothing's going to change until we see justice. So you can't, I mean, which one is it? You want justice, but you don't want justice without plugging the loopholes all along the way and making sure that, okay, this don't happen again here, here, and here, and here's where a loophole was. Let's fix this along the way. And then when you're putting new people into place in positions for the future, the maintaining and sustaining part, is that not, that to me, that is more important than the justice part. The justice is going to come. Because the whole reason we're doing this here is to get to the justice. You're going to get that. So this right here is more important, because if you truly care about justice, we can have less justice and less punishment over here, because we'll have less criminals over here when we fix this right here. Which will mean less headaches for you and less stress and anxiety and all these other things, where your paycheck's going, your taxes are going, and all these other things, because we'll have all the loopholes plugged here. And then we re-educate society on how every bit of these work, and when more people are pulling their weight, and it's also reciprocal, then we have less of everything, but more of wholesome things, more of patriotism, more of people doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's why I quote Merle Haggard's song all the time. When people start doing what they ought to be doing, then they won't be booing no more. When people start doing what they ought to be doing, then they won't be booing no more. That was in 1970s. That song. You know what the next line says in that song? It says, when people start doing what they ought to be doing, then they won't be booing no more. When the president goes through the White House door and does what he says he'll do, we'll all be drinking free bubble up and eating that rainbow stew. Well, I guess we ought to be getting us some free bubble up and rainbow stew, whatever the heck that is, because finally the first president in world and U.S. history to go through the White House door and do what they said they'll do is President, wartime President, Supreme Commander Donald John Trump. But it's because it's an operation, not because he's acting as a president in a real-time situation. So if you have the skill sets based on what you're supposed to have and what you're supposed to know, then you'll be able to detect and determine who's doing what behind their responsibilities. For example, let's get on it. Let's get on it, doggone it. Look at old Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG. Traitor. When President Trump puts the word traitor next to your name, that's not something you recover from. That's not something in a military operation that you recover from. That wouldn't be someone who you think is, they're playing a bad role and they're really good. Nah, not when you put the word traitor next to somebody. It's hard to overcome that. Hard to overcome the word traitor. So, naturally, someone who looks like you, talks like you, walks like you, and acts like you, naturally they're going to say things that, resonate with you. MTG talking about she did like this 40-minute long, whatever it was, video about how she served her nation honorably. And how she was fighting for this and this and that and that. Naturally she's going to say that. See, this is where you got to learn to separate, divorce your feelings and your emotions. The laws still show we're in a military operation. The laws and orders of the land, the highest laws and orders of the land, more than clearly outline 45-47 is a strategic plan, strategic operation, special operation. Irregular warfare, unconventional warfare. They're irregular and unconventional for a reason. That's why so many veterans look like chickens with their heads cut off as well. It takes a special skill set, special. So MTG says all the right things, gets on there, and it's all about what she did and all this and that and this and that and that and that. One little location, all you got to look at is one little spot. One little spot to show you what MTG was about. All right, $174,000 a year. All right, congressman and woman, that's what they make. All you had to know was one little spot. What did President Trump say way back in 2017? What was the first thing he started saying? See, this shows if you really love him or if you really know what's going on or not. The very first thing that President Trump went after and started saying in 2017 early was follow the money. Follow the money. He started hammering the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, all the three-letter agencies. But then he specified. He made it very specific to you, the people, we the people, everybody. All right? Especially if you're in a lower level, just a person, civilian doing what you're supposed to. He said it very specific. He said it's not everybody in these three-letter agencies. It's the senior level leadership. Senior level. That's why you, the people, you don't need to be hammering the CIA as a whole, the FBI as a whole, the Secret Service as a whole, the DOJ as a whole. It was the senior level leadership. The ones who had seniority, and then also, depending on who they were answering to, which would have been certain congressmen and women who developed their global alliance with the swamp. Their global alliance. Their quote-unquote democracy. And it's really more Republicans than it was Democrats. There's just as many Republicans as there are Democrats bought in to their global alliance. And it's because you're a Republican, conservative patriot out there, but especially if you're a patriot who weren't independent before, or Democrat before, or somewhere over here before, especially if you're a Republican conservative your whole life, these people look like you, talk like you, walk like you, act like you. They're the worst ones because you don't have the skill sets to see what they're doing back here. And that's okay until you learn them. Therefore, you should learn them. So there's one thing that she said in that whole video that she told on herself. She exposed herself. In this farewell video where she's quote-unquote resigning, she tells on herself without saying, hey, blah, 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 blah. She just said it like this. She said that I have someone who bought stock for me. If you have someone buying stock for you, that is stock information. That's inside information. She's worth $3.2 million in her stocks. If stock trading was that easy that you could just, you yourself, whoever you are, you just get on and you go, oh, I'm going to buy this, and oh, this looks hot, and this looks hot, and this looks hot, and this. If you were that good, guess who would be doing it more? It's kind of like casinos. If everybody was meant to win, more people would play. So it's a mindset. I know people who have gotten hung up on gambling because they think that, oh, it's easy. I know sports and I know this. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't know the algorithm and you don't know their parlays. The parlays are what get you. So see, so many people don't apply that. The whole thing President Trump talks about is we got to eliminate insider information for stocks and trades. And she sat there and told on herself, $3.2 million. Now, that's on the low. That's just this year alone from what studies show. She bought into Bitcoin, Amazon, Exelon, and a few other things. $3.2 million. What could you do with $3.2 million? Especially if you had inside information, what could you do? And let's just be honest. Those of us who know, there's people in here who know trade and stock and finance and this on the business side of things. She's being quote-unquote conservative, see, because she was getting inside and trader information. So if she would have gone and bought the hottest stocks at all time, it would have tipped the scales and it would have been more visible to average people because she would have been worth more than that if they were going after every hot stock they could get their hands on because they do have insider information, which means they know what's going to shoot up, they know what's going to fall. They know who's being investigated, who's dumping, who's doing this, shareholders, etc. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. So when you got mad, or maybe you were confused on why your favorite person was being axed or being called out by President Trump, then you failed knowing what President Trump's here for. You failed. You failed the test. As long as the laws and the orders of military and federal both together show the 45-47 is still ongoing, it's still ongoing. So I challenge all the people out there, again, if you haven't read and studied what you're supposed to, it's provided for you. I'm the only person who takes all of it in one sitting and provides it to you. If you get hung up on all these imbeciles, I'm going to catch my words today, all these imbeciles out there who says it's all hogwash and BS and conspiracy and I'm just leading you on and leading you forward and dragging you along, they're imbeciles. They have some ulterior motives themselves. Just for example, just really fast, just because it's funny. So I have someone call me a grifter out there. A specific person calls me a grifter. And they're trying to build their platform up. Go look at my link tree. My link tree doesn't have a donation link on it. You won't find any donation link posted on my pages. Go to their link tree. Donation, 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 donation. So if you're calling someone a grifter, you probably want to make sure you don't have a donation link up. That's what a grifter is. See, you want someone to believe your information, but then pay you for the information. I don't have subscription links. I don't have donation links up for that purpose. I have a Venmo. I have a PayPal because I use it in daily operations with my apparel, and then also buddies and friends. All right. And people have found it, and people have, yes, people have sent money before because people do that. That's what people do. But nowhere on my pages will you find me link, hey, donate here, buy me a coffee, and all that. I had to also create donation links because other people out there are putting donation links up with my name on it, making money on their own. See, because you can make a username anything you want it to be. So I had to put stuff up and say, well, this is my actual PayPal, this is my actual Venmo, because morons out there are putting my name on their link, making money. So see, the American dream is to make money. The American dream is to whatever your dream is. Yours could just be a little tiny house in the country, you know, maybe a brand new vehicle every now and then, whatever that may be. Or your dream may be to live in a penthouse suite on a country club, playing golf every day with a Lamborghini in the yard. Why are so many people getting beat up for trying to live the American dream? Can you, I mean, just fathom that. Just fathom that. So recently, there was a senator or some congressperson, I can't remember who it was, but they were saying how President Trump had not invoked the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. Mouthful there. The IEEPA. All right, so I'm going to call it that. So it's the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. But it's what I call the IEEPA because that's the acronym for it. So we're going to use it like that from here out. So there was an article about how President Trump didn't invoke that. This is how humorous this is, but this is also how easy this is. So both. So I bring that up because that's part of a national emergency. When you declare a national emergency, you invoke certain powers. 120 statutory powers becomes available to the president when he declares a national emergency. So this person recently was saying how President Trump didn't do so. That's the dumbest thing you could really say. But then turn around saying he don't have the authority to use that. That's even dumber, depending on how you want to split the hair. So this is why I've been showing people recently. The reason why you need to know what executive orders are, national emergencies, and then emergency powers, etc. Whether separately, you need to know what they are, and then together you need to know what they are because they all come with certain powers. So President Trump, this is what's so hilarious about when you hear Democrats and liberals out there saying President Trump can't do certain things. Yes, he most certainly can. One, law. If the law was unconstitutional, then why is it still in the law all these years? Every single law that President Trump's using was long before 2017. Long before November the 8th, 2016, the election. So, if it was against the law for President Trump to use orders to enforce that law, then the law should have been abolished long before 2017. Every single law that has an order with it that President Trump has invoked has been in place long before 2017. The Uniform Code of Military Justice became that title May the 5th, 1950. How old were you in 1950? Apply that. Some of you weren't even born. All right? That's how long the UCMJ has been in place as its name and title. We've always had war articles before and military law before, but it became known as the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is Title 10, Chapter 47. So there's that. The other portion to it, knowing the laws separately and together, executive orders separately and together, national emergencies separate and together. The other portion is knowing this. President Trump could have not had one single executive order with a national emergency or a national emergency alone, verbal, And guess what was open? 25 plus executive orders with national emergencies declared from Jimmy Carter to Obama. Which means that whoever, if it would have been a normal presidency starting in 2017, with just a normal president, not an operation, even a normal, regular sitting president would have still had the authority and power of all those executive orders and national emergencies, which come with 120 statutory powers, each national emergency declared. Now, they're the same 120 powers, but by theory, just to show you that if one was terminated, there's 24 left, well, there's still the 120 statutory powers. You just keep marking them down. If it came down to 2 and 1, well, there's still 120 powers available to that president. Which should show you how dangerous it is and was for others' sake. If it would have been bad dudes that got even worse, got into power with worse ulterior motives and worse agendas because of that. And then they would have said what? All they could have told you, especially the people who don't have a clue what's going on, don't have a clue about the 3 branches of government, don't have a clue about military laws and orders, don't have a clue about anything. All those who say I'm hogwash and BS and all those things, then those people could have said, well, that's what the law says. Right here. And they would have still done something on the front, but back here they'd have been doing the worst things. And not a single person who has called this hogwash, BS, and all the other things they've tried to do, to me especially, they've not taken every single law and order of the 45-47, plus military laws, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare. They're not taking any of those and told you how it isn't so. They haven't taken all the laws and the orders and vote, plus the visuals that go with it, and said, well, that ain't what you saw, and this ain't what the law says. They can't do it, because that ain't how it works. Therefore, you don't have a reason to be confused. You don't have a reason to have any stress, any fear, because it most certainly does outline what it outlines. They are deep state. And this is where you apply the words like moron and stupid. They're either deep state and or they're morons and stupid. You cannot say it anymore. Lazy don't define that. Lazy could just mean you're lazy and you haven't had the opportunity to read, study, comprehend, and say, here's the blueprint formula. Here you go. Don't worry about all this stuff. Here it is right here. It's called The Midnight Rider Rides Again. They're #1 bestsellers for a reason. Here they are. And someone lazy could be all of a sudden driven to have some initiative and some fire and go, wow, this just made it simple. So you have to call people stupid and morons when they're saying that laws and orders that are currently invoked that cannot be debunked, they're invoked for a reason, and they're all in a sequence, all in an order, and an application, which is a formula and a blueprint. They are there. Which brings me to the Aliens Act. All right, President Trump reshared a post yesterday. He reshared from April where the Aliens Act was upheld in a 5-4 ruling by the Supreme Court. Now, the Aliens Act is real simple, and I'm going to read some of it to you here, but, you have to go read it to fully comprehend and understand the history of it, but I'm going to read 2 different portions really fast for you, but you should go to archives.gov, and then also there's a congress.gov for this, but this is from the archives, all right? Passed in preparation for anticipated war with France, the Alien and Seditions Act tightened restrictions on foreign-born Americans and limited speech critical of the government. Whew. Now, I'm on record saying this way back before the Supreme Court clarified that President Trump can most certainly use the 1798 Aliens Act. I'm on record long before saying, and I'm the only one who's been talking about it, I'm on record saying, hey, there's another portion of the Aliens Act they're not talking about. It's called the Seditions Act. Now, you'll have historians, especially historians of Democrats and liberals, who are trying to use ulterior motives and agendas to skew things and to tell you that, oh, they say it was, they don't use the term abolished. They use another term for it. That it was, I'm trying to think of the term they use all the time. But basically they tell you that, oh, that doesn't stand anymore. I'm like, yes, it does. It was not abolished. It's a wartime act. Meaning you don't want this act to be invoked any other time until necessary. That's what it's there for. It's a wartime act. But there's another portion to it. It's called the Seditions Act. And no, it did not get abolished. So that's the key thing with this. Because we can't keep going in the future with everybody and their mama on social media thinking that they know something just because they read something on Google or they read something. We can't have that. We can't have people writing and saying what they want against the military and the government together and separately. We cannot have that until we re-educate America on what matters and how the law works, how it reads, how it's applicable, but also military law and federal. We can't have just everybody and their mama all over social media. So this act is very important because it has two parts to it. And all they're telling you right now on purpose is the aliens portion. But it's the Aliens and Seditions Act. And it had 4 parts to it, even though it sounds like 2. So I'm going to read a little bit more here just because on record. In 1798, the United States stood on the brink of war with France. The Federalist Party, which advocated for a strong central government, believed that the Democratic-Republican criticism of Federalist policies was disloyal and feared that aliens, in quotes, or non-citizens living in the United States would sympathize with the French during the war. As a result, Federalist-controlled Congress passed 4 laws known collectively as the Alien and Seditions Act. These laws raised the residency requirements for citizenship from 5 to 14 years, authorized the president to deport aliens, and permitted their arrest, imprisonment, and deportation during wartime. The Sedition Act made it a crime for American citizens to print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing about the government. Woo! So see, when it's one thing to write against the government and the military, especially a government and a military, a small government, but a small government and a big military that's fighting for the people, with the people, for the people, by the people, versus all these others out there trying to say that Derek Johnson's hogwash, Derek Johnson's bullcrap, this is all conspiracy and all this. And then that's that. Then the ones who try to steal the federal trademark, mine, all right, then try to frame me doing all kinds of things. All that is sedition, ladies and gentlemen. That's sedition. When people are trying to prevent you from hearing what's really in laws and orders, when they're trying to prevent you, deter you, distract you, but especially with misinformation and blatant lies, they have an agenda. They have ulterior motives somewhere, somehow. Now, that's just happened to me. I'm not the only one. And look at my level versus President Trump's level. Look at Eric and Don Jr. and them. So see, when you make that applicable and you see what people are trying to do out there, they're either deep state and or situation. They're either deep state and or a moron or stupid. They're either one or both. So the Aliens Act. So when you hear a judge out there trying to say that President Trump can't expand deportations, etc., then guess what they're doing? They're trapping the judges. And you've heard me talk in other podcasts as well. I've broken down how 2017 to 2021 was a resetting of the legislative branch. 2021 to 2025 was a resetting of the executive branch. And right now, 2025 which will be to 2029, will be the resetting of the judicial branch. And I'm going to work it backwards this time around. So right now you hear judge this, judge that, court this, court that, appeals court, district court, 5th Circuit, 4th Circuit, 3rd Circuit, 2nd. It's all courts. It's all judges. Everything dominating media, etc. are judge, 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 judge. Court, 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 court. Then you work your way backwards, 2021 to 2025. Right before what people thought they saw with quote-unquote Joe, FEMA and Department of Homeland Security put out a document, a publication that was already under the continuity government, continuity operations documentation and the joint operations and joint planning of the military that, and the executive order that proves we're in a continuity government, Executive Order 13961, December 7, 2020, which is President Trump's Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. All right. There's a document. There's a publication, January the 1st, 2021. It's called The Reconstitution of the Executive Branch. Well, reconstitution means you take something from its state and put it back in its original state. Then you had the quote-unquote funeral for Joe. All right? It wasn't just for quote-unquote Joe. It was for the monarchy as well, meaning that you're watching an operation. 3 cannons at Arlington were the only cannons shown all day long for quote-unquote Joe. And they weren't even shown after what Americans thought was the oath of office. They weren't even shown after it. That's when the cannons go off. It's when the president takes their oath. As soon as they're done, you'll hear the 4 ruffles. Dun, 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 4 of those. Then Hail to the Chief starts simultaneous the cannons. That didn't happen. And now you have I call it a bookend, meaning you have this with President Trump on the 2025, January the 20th, and then from 2017 to 1969, you can go and see all the inaugurations. 4 cannons, 21 rounds for those. Then there's the outlier, quote-unquote Joe. The only cannons shown all day long for quote-unquote Joe were 3 at Arlington. It's a funeral. They never showed any other cannons except with President Trump. They showed the 4 cannons, 21 rounds with President Trump on the same day, January the 20th, 2021. It's that simple. And I've broken that down elsewhere. Now let's go back to 2017 to 2021. That was the resetting of the legislative. That's when all these unique laws and orders went into place. That's when all the unique strategies that set up for the Aliens Act to be invoked. It's set up for this because this portion, that was in April, so we're in the portion of the judicial branch. So the judicial is interpreting what the president's doing way back here. That's all the judicial branch is for, to interpret the law. But that ain't what it's been before 2016 and back. The judicial branch was more of your legislative branch, dominating legislation, dominating what should happen and what should be for whom? The swamp. Setting things up for them. Their alliances, their quote-unquote democracy, their benefits, their families, them, not you, the low-level liberal, not you, the low-level Democrat, not you, the Republican conservative, especially y'all, conservative Republican patriot, but for them. So draining of the swamp means everybody that's set up for them. So naturally, Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these people who have insider information, stock information, and all these things that set themselves, naturally the Republicans are going to say, oh, I fought for this country, and I did this, and I fought for you, and that. Naturally going to say that, because that's their humiliation and embarrassment, because their stain hadn't been shown yet what she actually did. Oh, it will be. It should be already known already when she said that I had a stockbroker who bought things for me. I had someone who bought things for me. Stockbroker. They know what to buy. They know what's popping. So now go back to the Aliens Act and the judges. President Trump issued Executive Order 13977 on January the 18th, 2021. It's a protection order for all judges, law enforcement, and prosecutors. On January the 18th, 2021, that would have been 2 days before the world thought, quote unquote, Joe became president. So how come if President Trump is a dictator, a Nazi, a communist, a king, a pedophile, and all these things they charge of him, how come they didn't abolish anything? I mean, you got to really think about this now. This is so freaking easy and simple. Really think about it. President Trump didn't become the threat January the 20th, 2025. President Trump became the threat on June the 16th, 2015 when he rolled down the escalator. This is how easy this is. This also proves the Midnight Rider Rides Again, Part 1 and 2. It proves the 45-46. It proves everything. President Trump didn't become the threat January the 20th, 2025. He didn't become the threat January the 20th, 2017. He became the threat June the 16th, 2015 when he rolled down that escalator. If there were still people who didn't know what was about to take place, meaning they had no clue that a military occupation and military government and military operation was about to take over, if there were still actors who had no idea what was about, he was the threat then, not when he took office. That's why so many quote-unquote patriots and or bandwagoners look atrocious. When you're up one day, down the next. Up one day, down the next. Jump ship one day, try to get back on the next. This is so simple, it's not even funny. President Donald John Trump ain't the threat right now. The threat was way back there. He's the promise right now. This is the finale. This is the home stretch. Ain't nobody should be jumping ship now. Ain't nobody should be looking wavy right now. Ain't nobody should be wishy-washy right now. Nobody. If you're wishy-washy now or wavering right now, it means you never were to begin with. And you should be disappointed and ashamed in yourself. Now, you can still be saved and you can still be on the good side of humanity, but you should be disappointed. Because this stuff is so simple, it's not even funny. But that's why it had to be a top-down operation, because so many low-level hanging fruit. You're down one day, up the next. Down one day, the world's falling on you one day. The next day, you're Rocky on top of the step. You're doing all that. One day, you just... One day you're a chicken with your head cut off. The next day you're the cock of the walk. I mean, it's just like that ain't a warrior. That's not a warrior attitude. It's not a warrior spirit. You shouldn't worry about what people say anyway. If I can make it, you can make it. You got to look at that. If I can handle all this crap, you can handle it. It's just a bunch of noise, a bunch of crap, a bunch of morons, a bunch of idiots, a bunch of people out there. So many people with ulterior motives and agendas. They're losing. And they ain't ever going to have ground anymore. That's how you got to look at it, because they ain't. And we're going to make sure of that. So it had to be a top-down operation, because so many people don't even know the simplicities of a good small government along with the military. 800 generals and admirals more than proved. Now, one of them can go awry, always, sure, but guess what? There's always a man and a woman who are ready to take their place. So when you see a general removed, an admiral removed, don't worry. There's a good man and a woman waiting to step up into that place. But 800 generals and 800 admirals, let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people, when you hear 800, that just sounds like individuals. It's not. 800 generals and admirals means 800 divisions. A division can have up to, and on average, 75,000 soldiers. Do your math. So now let's go into the military occupation side of it. The military occupation is a blueprint, it's a shield, and it's an operation. It's a blueprint with a formula, but it's a shield and an operation. All right, it didn't mean that none of this was fake. It didn't mean any of that. It just means the operation, it's not designed for you. It's designed to protect you. So a military occupation, military operation is imagine a dome being around you, like what we do with air and missile defense. It's got a shield and a dome around you. The real war, though, is with the alliance, the global alliance, and then the good guys and gals on top, the generals and the admirals who know who all the pieces are, who will and won't capitulate, will and won't participate, and then you alienate down the ones who don't. All right, so Yemen was one of those. All right, you have Gaza being one of those, Iran being one of those, Ukraine being one of those. Then you got to go look and know some history on who had stake in all of those. You got to know who had stake in them. And each one of them are separate as far as the operation of them, but they're all tied together because they link back to whom? The deep state. They link back to executive orders with national emergencies by whom? 2016 and prior. That's why executive orders and national emergencies are so key and so important. That's why President Trump says, I've ended 8 wars in 8 months. Well, most of those are in executive orders with national emergencies by the deep state. So this is why you have to study irregular and unconventional warfare. They're irregular and unconventional for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. It's only for a few people who know this stuff. There are so many veterans who have no clue what's going on because they don't know irregular and unconventional warfare, and they don't have the IQ, a high IQ, meaning a high functioning IQ to take every single piece like I can and put it together. That's why there's only a few of us who talk about it. And I hate that for you, but again, we can't make people know it. We can't make people have passion for it too. You can still know it and not have passion for it. And there's a lot of veterans out there who don't want a name and a face, who write me all the time, who do know what's going on. They just don't want a name and a face. And that's respectable. Because some people don't want to do this daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. I do, and I love it. But just because you've never heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because you can't comprehend it doesn't mean it's not happening or it doesn't exist. And that's why you got to be careful when you have family members who are veterans. If they're talking down to you, saying this is up, they're just lazy, and they also don't know what's going on because they haven't read, studied, and comprehended what's been applied. All the laws and orders applied in this situation. But it's also heavy, 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 irregular, and unconventional warfare. Which brings me to my next point. There's no other reason why President Donald John Trump, even though he's president to you, he's really not. He's a supreme commander and a wartime president, which is a whole different position, responsibility, role. But wartime President Donald Trump, there's no other reason why he would be here in the first place. If this wasn't a strategic plan and special operation, there would be no reason to bring an outsider in and have the chaos and all the publicity, and there'd be no reason for it. The reason why it is that is because a lot of it's distractions for certain reasons, but also it's bringing down the swamp in other ways as well. And we're going to get to that in a minute, because I'm going to show you something that I hadn't shown in a while. All right, and I found a new way to say it, and this is what I'm always doing, is studying ways to find a new way to say it to you. All right, it's like trying to find a new way to say I love you in another manner, right? So There's no other reason why President Trump would also be using terms occupied territory, white flag of surrender, capitulation, puppet government, exile, which is a government in exile. That's the full term. There's no other reason why President Trump would be using those to you, the people. And God love you if this applies to you. I don't mean this derogatory and condescending to you. But if you're still one of those who cannot name the three branches of government, or who writes the law, who enforces the law, and who interprets, and then some, why would he be using terms that are not government anything, that are all straight out of the Law War Manual? Why would he be using Law War Manual, special operation, irregular and unconventional warfare type language and verbiage to you, the people who don't even know your simplicities of what you're supposed to know on the government side? Why would he be using this language over and over and over again? He just validated me again a month ago when he said with the Turkish president, he remained my friend while I was in exile. While I was in exile, he repeated the term exile 3 times. And it's one of those where he puts emphasis on the word so it stands out. It's an outlier for a reason. Because he wants you to hear it. And it's a proclamation which will have a timestamp, because as we move past it, that's a month and a half ago, it's still back there. He said it, and it's timestamped. It's validation. It's proclamation. It's proof. It's no different than an email. Now, you don't have to believe it. But for those who read, study, comprehend, it's there. It's proclamated, and it's timestamped. And it all goes into the bigger picture when you get down the road here and you look back, and that hindsight is 2020. And that 2020 is the 45-47 even more clear than what it already is for those who've already read, studied, and comprehended. Now, so that's why I tell people, when you step on your side of the line, like those who try to lie on me, lie about me, use misinformation, all right, false information, false accusations, trying to steal from me, trying to frame me, you chose your line in the sand. And if you thought you were, and if you were a good person, guess what you did? You made yourself look horrendous for no reason at all. And that applies to anybody out there with other, not just myself. When they choose their line in the sand, and they try to lie on you, ridicule, mock you, they chose it. All you got to do is be the bull on the hill, baby. Sharpen them horns. Set your feet in. Protect your heel. And when you're standing on truth, when you're standing on facts, when you're standing on the laws and the orders and the ideologies of our foundation, and you know all that, then you'll know that 45-47 is just that. Stand on it, baby. Sharpen your horns. Dig your feet in. Be the bull on the hill. Ain't nobody can take your heel from you when you stand on that. Because that's exactly what's taking place. There's no other reason why President Trump will be here. Because I can tell you right now, if President Trump was using all these terms, and especially the military, all right, if he was using military and civil operations, and he didn't have the laws and orders back, guess who is the judge of that? Not only people right now, but history. The whole reason President Trump was put here was to reset the government, reset the military, reset everything, which is the Declaration of Independence, resetting on a new foundation, resetting the ideologies back here, up here, erasing all this in the middle. If President Trump was doing all this to benefit himself, benefit the other side, which you would call your side, but if he did that and he never did it for all the people, then history will judge him for that. History will judge all these admirals and generals for that. Now, some people could say, well, I don't care if history judges. Okay, well, that's you. But a lot of people do. You want to go, if you have an opportunity to go down in the history books for doing something for God, your nation, your state, your people, your family, your friends, wouldn't you much rather go down for good, not bad? Pretty simple, ain't it? Good, bad, good, evil. Pretty simple. So history will be the judge. You think President Trump came out of the lifestyle he's living, a billionaire lifestyle, to take on all the mockery, the hate, the ridicule, the shame, just that alone? Plus what he would have to do in real situations, being shot at, security for not only himself, but his wife, the first lady, all right, his children, the first family, all right, and then their children and their children. You really think that he came out of the lifestyle he already had to take on that? Come on, people. There is no reason at all every single day that you don't wake up feeling like, woo! There should be no ship jumping. There should be no negativity whatsoever, especially at this point. Anyone who's treating President Trump as a regular president, you're missing the ballpark very bad. You're not even in the ballpark. You're nowhere near the ballpark. There's also no other reason simultaneous that they would invoke the Aliens Act, because it is a wartime act only. There's no other reason. And then also, if they invoke that and it wasn't what they say it is, and what we say it is, and what we know it is, if it was invoked just for some other ulterior motive or agenda, then history will judge that as well. The truth will always prevail. It always does. It don't matter if it's today, tomorrow, a year, 5, 10, somewhere down the road, it will unveil itself. So let me get back on my notes here. So the swamp draining required unique strategic plan and special operations. It's just it. Now, I can't make you read. I can't make you study. If I could, oh boy, it would be unethical if I could, especially on some people. So it don't matter who's saying what. Like I say, there's a lot of veterans out there who call this BS and all that. Well, guess what? If you're a civilian, you can recover a lot easier than a veteran. But if you're a veteran saying that, your recovery ain't going to be good for you. It already isn't good for the people who do read and study. It's already not good. But it's really going to be bad for you when all is unveiled. And you did it to yourself. I didn't do it to you. Especially the death threats I received from one particular veteran. Ain't gonna look good on you, pal. Especially when I show the people what you said, your name, your face, and everything. You death threaten me, I'm gonna dox the heck out of you. So it goes back to not many had the high level IQ, and that's not me trying to brag. It's just that, hey, look, God put me in a position. Here you go. Here's the .gov, the .mil. Here's how they all go together. Here's the laws. Here's the orders. Here's how they can join. Here's what you're looking at. You know, as you go along, some of you do know to read the laws and the orders. I'm not the only one that knows the laws and the orders, but some didn't realize that all these laws and orders from 2017 to present day, when you get up in the aircraft view and you look down on it, then it's a blueprint that shows it's a strategic plan and operation. It's not just a good law here and a good law here and a good order here. No, it's an operation. And the laws show the bigger picture. The laws and orders of the federal over here come over here to the military. This is irregular and unconventional warfare. The puppet government and the government in exile, those are two things that are separate. They go together, but they're separate. One applies to one and one applies to the other. The puppet government would apply to quote-unquote Joe in 2021 to 2025. That was a puppet government, civil affairs. The government in exile will be your military portion. The military had full control of the nation. All right, it was like a boundary, like a big globe, a dome, however you want to look at it. That was your government in exile with President Trump back here and the military operating. He had full control of the military generals and admirals. Everybody was doing that. The visuals are there. The laws are there for it. The executive orders, the national emergencies. And then what Joe did not do. For the people who thinks Joe was real, it's what he didn't do. That proves the military occupation, military operation, the military government. It's what, quote-unquote, Joe, and if you want to say that, quote-unquote, Obama was behind the scene, whatever. It's what they did not do that proves that that was all operational, that it is all a military occupation, military operation, military government. Lawful. So again, no one's taken all these and debunked it, because they can't, because that's not how laws and orders work. So then it goes to this. Outside of what you think you see on mainstream media in a wartime clarified war by the Supreme Court clarified we're in a wartime, because the Aliens Act, again, is a wartime act only. So because of that, then you got to apply that the mainstream media are under a wartime code as well. It's called 47 United States Code Section 606. It's the Telecommunications Act of 1996. It's actually titled War Powers of the President. Well, then you got to go and say, where's Obama? Where's Bill? Where's Hillary? Where's Bush? Where's Mitt Romney? Where's Paul Ryan? Where's John Kasich? Where's Fiorina, or however you say her name? The female that ran for president in 2016. Where'd she go? What happened to Kim Jong-un? You remember that Hillary and all them were saying President Trump, with his temperament, he was going to start a nuclear war with North Korea? Have you heard from the little fat boy? Where's the little fat boy at? I know what he's doing this time of the year. He's hoarding all the Christmas Twinkies. He ain't heard about Dollar General yet. They got them galore at the Dollar General, so he ain't even heard about that yet. He's going to take all of them off the shelf there. Where's Kim Jong-un? Why aren't the media saying, we're North Korea, North Korea? So in a military operation like this, what you do is you capture Obama, Hillary, Bill, Bush, take them back here. All right? Then this is real simple. This is what you've been witnessing and watching. This is my new way to say it to you. This is another language for you, another love language for you, if you will. So in a military occupation that sets the parameters, the playing field, because the playing field is not designed for you. It's designed to protect you, because you're not a part of the operation. You're not a part. You don't know who's good. You don't know who's bad. You may think you do. You don't. All right, you only know after the fact. You only know when they make it public and visual. You don't know the clandestine. You don't know the covert. You're not supposed to. For some of you, if you did know, you would blabbermouth so quick, then guess what would happen? You'd blow the mission and operation. So everything I talk about's already been done. There's things I know that I can't talk about, but I also prove to the people that I'm around that I can do what? I can do as I'm told. I can do things accordingly, according to laws and orders and regulations, customs, principles, standards, ethics, etc. Discipline, structure, however you want to coin it. So what you've been witnessing the whole time is when you capture certain people, all right, and you pull them back here. I mean, you got them. They're not going anywhere. They can't go anywhere. You got them in padded cells. You got them where the TV's so high they can't reach it. All right, they can't get to the cords. They don't have bed sheets and things of that nature. They can't do the old school tie themselves up or anything like that, suffocate themselves. All right. You put them in a cold cell, right? Things like that. They get fed daily. They get water. They get treated humanely. But other than that, there's nothing they can do to harm themselves. And you put these TVs up there. You say, look, here's what we're going to do. President Trump is the face of this operation. He knows what's going on. He is fully on board with this, and we're going to trash the ever-living heck out of him. It's going to be your people trashing him on TV. Sure, your low-level hanging fruit people out there, they're going to eat it up. They're going to love every bit of it. They're going to call him a pedophile. They're going to call him all kinds of things, a dictator, a king, a Nazi. You're going to call him a threat to democracy. You got your people so brainwashed they don't even know we're a republic. We're not a democracy. Right? Your people are going to eat it up and love it. But until you tell us what we want you to say, until you make it public confession on this camera right here, on this TV right here, until you full public confession, here's what we're going to do. We're going to trash President Trump all day long. We're going to get your people all riled up, the people who support you no matter what. We're going to get them, reel them in, pull them in, everything. Get them all stirred up on Epstein and all these other things that you were participating with. All right? We're going to trash President Trump, and he knows about it. He's fully on board. You're going to trash the crap out of him. We're going to get everybody pulled in. And then we're going to take your other key people one by one. Or it may be them. Until you get a confession, until you give us that, we're gonna trash him, and then you up to the plate. So, for example, here's a recent one that took place that you witnessed. You all witnessed it, and you witnessed a military operation. You witnessed unconventional and irregular warfare. You witnessed all of it right in front of you. And I kept me and all the podcasters I'm on with, but they're not really podcasters. Everybody's in a military position is acting external, but with the military still. I was given a cool little spot, and all these others are too. When you have a full bird colonel and other colonels, they're not far from generals. You got to keep in mind they're friends with generals. They know, everybody knows what's going on. So here's what you witnessed. I always quote the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And I tell everybody, if you want just a simple, like, cool movie that's not so documentary type, but it's real movie, or one of the iconic legends of the original Hollywood before it was bad. All right, and then also he was a brigadier general in the military. One-star general. Jimmy or James Stewart. All right. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. In that movie, he stands and he exhausts himself. And he reads so much stuff. And he went for however many hours. And they were all complaining. And they were all, interrupting and objections and you name it. And he just kept going. And he kept going and kept going. He exhausted himself. What did you see recently? It was the same replication of that, but it was a polar opposite because of what they were doing with it. Hakeem Jeffries. They had Hakeem Jeffries stand there for hours, and he set this record. And all the Democrats and the liberals, the low-level hanging fruit, oh, finally, there's our new leader. Yeah, Hakeem, you tell him, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, Hakeem Jeffries is what? Oversight committee. Email proof. Probably should have had his girl Hillary show him how to delete some emails. Boop, boop. Here's how you erase it. Here's how you take it down to the river and you dump it. All right. Probably should have got one of his team members, right? They're all in the same rat nest together. Probably should have learned how to delete some emails because they got email solid proof that Hakeem Jeffries was emailing Epstein for donation money. After he had already been exposed and prosecuted for sex crimes. That's why I say deport liberals. Because any low-level hanging fruit that can hear that and know that and still support someone like that, they need to be out of here. Out. Gone. So you inflict all of the pain on the deep state until they give you a full confession, which would be what? Full confessions. For whom? You, the people. All right, so when you're running an operation like that, now a lot of it's still strategic and it's strategically planned, meaning like it's pre-planned. This is what we're going to do. We're going to pre-plan it, meaning that they did this way back. They would have gotten all the captures way back. History's going to show this. History's going to atone for this. History's going to show this. All right, I hope I'm alive for it, for the actual full-fledged proof where everybody can see like every single little notch along the belt. All right, meaning, I don't know, God may have other plans for me. You just never know. You know, you never know about life. But, again, every single one of you are going to see it if you live long enough. They're inflicting this visual pain, which is all proclamation, it's all controlled, it's all a controlled operation. They inflict all this until the ones back here captured are ready for their full confessions. Well, you're seeing certain things along the way, right? And it had to be done this way for record's sake, but also history's sake. Record at the time being, whenever you see your judgment, we see the judgment, etc. When you see those, then that's going to be your full-fledged closure, right? Not disclosure, because that'd be the closure. All right, now you're seeing disclosures right now. You saw Comer stand up and fully expose Hakeem Jeffries in his emails. So that's a disclosure. It's a light disclosure because that's just one piece right now. But your heavy disclosure will come. And then when your justice happens, that'll be your closure. All right? And then whenever and however they choose to show that President Trump was in a specific strategic role with the 45-47. So you inflict all this pain on these people. History is going to judge everything. You got to always keep in mind, history is going to judge. So if they were just playing war games with you and playing emotional games with you and playing on your heartstrings, if they were doing that, then everybody's a piece of you know what, right, for playing with you, the people out there. Because you're already in a vulnerable position because you're in this position of acceptance and recipient only. Because you're not in these positions, right? So, you know, a lot of people take my word for it, and I've told people, well, don't just take my word, but at the same time, there's not many who knows what's going on who have the high IQ to take all the laws, all the orders, all your different kinds of warfare and tie it all together. But when you know your foundation, and I say your foundation, I'm talking about our United States foundation, when you know the Declaration of Independence, when you know the Constitution, when you know the Federalist Papers, when you know even what Thomas Paine wrote about, common sense, when you know all your foundation, your origin, your history, but then you pair it with today's laws and orders that are currently invoked, military and federal, it outlines that. It is to the T of our origin and foundational history and the ideologies of our founders. When you know that, then you'll have your peace and your comfort. Not only will you have your peace and your comfort, though, you'll know that everything moving forward and then on into the future, but then the hindsight 2020, it's going to read perfectly for history's sake. Therefore, this is not a heartstring playing game theory to play on your emotions. It's just that there was so much corruption in every aspect that it had to be done this way. If you just changed it overnight, sure, you could. Sure, President Trump and everybody could have said this, and that. But then you have people who become what? Well, if you can just do it like that, then you can just do it like that every time, and no one would ever participate with what we have now built up to. If we were living in the 1800s and this was going on, you wouldn't have had massive major cities. You wouldn't have massive multiple major corporations, organizations, social media, companies, corporations, organizations, small business, big business. You didn't have that. Look what we've built up to. Look what we've become accustomed to. Look at your lifestyle. Look where you eat. That's a big one. Most people aren't growing your garden like they were in the 1800s. They were all growing things. Small, medium, big. People weren't relying on big box stores for groceries and things of that nature. So look what we've built up. Because of what we've built up to is why it had to be this way. Because if you just ripped the rug out everywhere, then you wouldn't have people participate in every aspect of it. And then you become dependent on the government for sure, then because you would expect the government to change things when it wasn't good. Or wasn't going your way. Or wasn't what you want it to be. Well, change it. You can do that. Go in there right now and change this. So now, watch this. This is the fun part. This is the part I was like, this is another portion. This is another language here that I'm like, this. I've said it, but I'm going to say it again in a whole different kind of way. So 2021 to 2025, the resetting of the executive branch. Now keep in mind, President Trump didn't become the threat January the 20th, 2025. He wouldn't be the threat in a second, third, fourth term, whatever you want to look at it as, which is not the fourth yet, but 2028 would be the fourth by laws and orders. But however you want to look at it, if you want to call this a second term, I can show you where it's not, but if you just want to still hang on that, whatever. He wouldn't be the threat in the second or third term. He'd have been the threat before his first term because he was different, never in politics, never in the military. Even if he'd been acting as a regular sitting president, he'd have been a threat. Period. Because he was different. He didn't do things their way. He also knew who was and who wasn't. Because he'd already been in those social society clubs. He already knew those people. He knew who was and wasn't. That's why he says the same things. That's why you can go back and look at videos older than me of him saying things about China. The same thing he says about them today. That is consistency, ladies and gentlemen. 40 years worth, that's more than that. It's 45 plus years is consistency of a man who knows what the heck he's talking about. Even if you just cannot wrap your mind around the operation at this point. If you can just think that alone right there proves everything. He became the threat June the 16th, 2015 when he rolled down the escalator. The threat became the promise on January the 20th, 2017. So go back to what I said a while ago. It's not what people thought Joe did. It's what they didn't do. If you just wanted to, he wasn't real, and he wasn't really president. Laws and orders more than clearly outline irregular and unconventional warfare, puppet government, government exile, which is all strategic plan, a strategic operation, and special operation. But if you just can't wrap your mind around that, then let's put this here for a moment, and I can come in there and show you that it's what they did not do that more than proves the portion over here that you can't comprehend. Because if President Trump is a threat to the Constitution, to their democracy, which we're not, we're a republic, Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution that they love to put in their mouth but don't know anything about, all right? Then also, every single aspect of the laws and the orders that they claim that they say the words laws and orders all the time, but they don't know anything about either, because they manipulated and gaslit you. So 2021 to 2025, it's everything that quote unquote Joe. And if you're one of those who thought Obama was pulling the strings back here, even better, because I can show you that that is not the case. But that's also awesome with this new setup of delivering this, and what I'm about to show you is, even if you thought Obama was back here pulling the strings and quote unquote Joe was a puppet, I get so distracted when I hear puppet. I hear the "I'm your puppet." I hear that old Motown song. But anyway, just for fun. But if you thought that Obama's back here pulling the strings, then you got to take that into consideration for what I'm about to set up. That would be even better to show you that, okay, if Obama was back there pulling the strings, it's what they did not do that more than proves the military government, the military occupation, the military operation. Then you take every bit of President Donald John Trump language and verbiage. Why is he using terms straight out of the Law of War Manual? Puppet government, the term puppet government and occupied country are in the same exact chapter in the Law of War Manual. Military occupation. Then for your Aliens Act, there has to be an invasion. And President Trump, in his speeches along the way, said the terms, we have been invaded. Invasion. It's an invasion. So those are proclamations, and they're timestamped. And he didn't say it just in one speech, and one speech only. He said it all along the way. And he said it over here in the first term. Then he said it in what you thought was quote-unquote Joe, which wasn't. But for the ones that think it was, he said it consistently. We have been invaded. We've been invaded. We've been invaded. The reason why that's key is the suspension clause, the writ of habeas corpus. That's not Article 2. That's not executive power. That's not president. The suspension clause is legislative. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the Constitution. So if people wanted to yell at President Trump, they'd have to yell at whom? A bipartisan Congress. Because it was a bipartisan Congress. A lot of their Democratic counterparts in the House of Representatives, who was the one who put the Section 1550 into Title 50, Chapter 33, which is a temporary entry in the War Powers Resolution Act. That's why I sound like a broken record. Title 50, War and National Defense, not international. Chapter 33, the War Powers Resolution Act, which you cannot find Obama's name in there anywhere for Libya or Pakistan. Osama bin Laden, Gaddafi. Supreme Court Docket 23-939, which ties Obama to murder. Who was Obama's vice president? Who was his Secretary of State again? Now, let's go back really quick. 2021 to 2025. It's not what, quote unquote, Joe did to the average person who thought he was doing anything. And by the way, the 118th Congress passed the least amount of laws in United States history. Wonder why? Oh, because we're in a military government, military occupation, military operation. It pays to know the laws and orders, ladies and gentlemen. So from 2021 to 2025, if President Trump was a dictator, a king, a threat, a Nazi, a communist, a pedophile, then how come the Democrats and liberals didn't fight like hell to undo every single thing, executive order-wise, without a mass mercy, and also executive orders with mass mercies? I mean, I'm just letting you marinate just for a moment. Because there were 8 executive orders with 8 mass mercies that, quote-unquote, Joe, continued to President Trump's that make no sense if President Trump is a dictator, a Nazi, and all these things. They're deporting your migrants, enforcing DOGE, taking the Panama Canal back, terminating mainstream media contracts, terminating their organizations completely. All right, so there's that. Then you have Texas 2024. If Joe was a sitting president, then President Trump was the only person with a presidential title, former or present, that was at the border with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas. The only person seen at the border with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas. The only media coverage for the border during that time period was at Eagle Pass, Texas, and Del Rio, Texas. Why was quote-unquote Joe going to Brownsville, Texas? The media never talked about Brownsville. It was always Del Rio and Eagle Pass. And why does the Brownsville, Texas website say the 47th president visited today? You know how easy that is to fix a website? I run all my websites. All I got to do is log in and go change my bio, whatever. I could change it like that. That's simple. You don't even need a computer coder to do that. President Trump, if he'd have been a former president meeting with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general, that would have been a breach of national security of a sitting president. That would have been a federal law violation. And then also, not only federal, but they could have charged him with sedition as well. Because that would have been a visual of an attempt to overthrow the sitting government, the sitting president. If people thought that quote-unquote Joe was real, then the Democrats could have charged President Trump with all of those. Hey, that's sedition. What are you doing meeting with the governor and the adjutant general? That's a rank structure. That's a chain of command if you know the military. The adjutant general reports to the governor unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. Title 10 is presidential only. That is your Uniform Code of Military Justice, Title 10. Title 10 is presidential only. And if you get on Google and you look this up, it would say that quote-unquote Joe sent troops down to Texas. Where's his Title 10 order? There's no Title 10 order on record by quote-unquote Joe. There's no executive order or anything with a Title 10 by quote-unquote Joe. Where is it? Now, they'll tell you on quote-unquote Biden archives that he revoked Proclamation 9844. Where's his Title 10 at, though? Where the troops were in Texas. So when the visual of President Trump in February 2024, so 2024, who was visually president to the rest of the world who don't know laws and orders, quote-unquote Joe. And then it tells you that Proclamation 9844 from February the 5th, 2019 was revoked by Joe. Then how were the troops getting down to Texas? 14 states deployed to Texas. There's no Title 10 or Title 32 order in place by quote-unquote Joe. So even if it wasn't in Title 10, there's no federal presidential call-up under Title 32 status. The only any Title 10 or 32 order in place that could have put those troops in Texas at that appointed time on record was the original Proclamation 9844 by President Trump, which shows you all of the certain laws by quote-unquote Joe that look to be perceived that way and or revocations were not real. They were just put there because if you did know to go to the Federal Register, if you did know how to go look up proclamations, executive orders, executive actions. Oh, here's a revocation. Well, how the heck are the troops still there? They got to be on the Title 10 or Title 32 order. Where's the order? It's not there. The only order in place that put those troops there that you can find that kind of action is President Trump's from way back in 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2017, certain actions going on right now as we speak. New York. So your Governor Hochul called for federal support for the invasion. So she used the term invasion. Oh, cohesive of illegal migrants. And we have full proof that the National Guard were in subways. They were all over. Everybody read about it. You saw about it. New Yorkers knew about it. You saw troops in the subways. There's no Title 10 or Title 32 order by quote-unquote Joe anywhere. There is a Title 10 order, though, by President Trump that would apply to that situation. Then, in 2024, it went from like 2,700 troops up to 6,800. There's still no Title 10 or Title 32 order in place by quote-unquote Joe. So how did they increase the troops from a 2,700 to 6,800? Immigration. Migrants. That is not a state topic. That would be presidential. Oh, is that why the Aliens Act was invoked? It's not that difficult, people. Southern Command. Recently saw an article that, Southern Command operations, Operation Southern Spear for Venezuela. It stirred up all the liberals. That's not the start of the Venezuelan operation. The Venezuelan operation started April the 1st, 2020. Southern Command launched, and it tells you on the website, it begins with Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation. April the 1st, 2020. 22 joint partners in the Caribbean Sea. Southern Command. Who's running Operation Southern Spear? Southern Command. What order are they under? Executive Order 13692 with the national emergency. Who was that? Obama. President Trump inherited all these things, but it's not an inheritance in a bad way. This is all strategic. So when he says, I inherited this, whoever was going to be the face of this operation was going to say that. That's the verbiage they're using right now because it's light verbiage. They're not ready for disclosure that you're watching a full-blown operation unless you want to know that. You can know that. Midterm rallies. There's no such thing as a midterm rally. President Trump was going around all these rallies telling you terms that have to do with the law of war manual. If you take, that's why I tell you, there's one portion of the speech that you're listening to that fits for the average ear. There's portions in that that's fit for people like me to pull. Okay, that means this, that means this, that means this. The rest is fill-in. The average person is going to hear that because they don't know what's going on lawfully. They don't know what's going on with irregular and unconventional warfare. So it's got two-way language. My mother loves when I tell this story because I was born in Mobile, Alabama. And there was a fella who went on to have a career, a good career, even though probably should be term limits on Congress, but I guess the people will decide that later. But this person went on to have a career in Alabama Congress at some capacity, but he was captured in the Vietnam War. He's the one they put on TV back then. And see right here, you can just see my fireplace mantle, but you can't see what's over here and you can't see what's over here. He had Vietnamese standing over here where you couldn't see him. And then had guns on him and all kinds of other things. And he's sitting there looking at the screen on world TV. On our side of things, the military was sitting there observing every bit of that video. His body language, everything. They're looking in the corner here, if there's any shadows. They're looking at everything. And he was told to tell our people that we're okay, we have water, we have food, we're being treated humanely. Ladies could do this a lot easier than a guy, so this is why you should get chill bumps, because it's a male doing it. Without sounding robotic, he said we are being treated humanely, and we have water, we have food, He blinked in Morse code, simultaneously talking. He blinked in Morse code, torture. T-O-R-T. He blinked. Morse code. With his eyes. Now, if poor old Jack would have had morons out there who try to say that it's BS and hogwash and all this unconventional and irregular warfare, he'd have still been in torture. But because there's people like me with high IQ sitting there watching the video, they picked up on something so unique, so different, and going, oh, hold on, he's doing something with his eyes. Hold on, Morse code. T-O-R-T-U-R-E. Torture. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes you got to be the bull on the hill. Sharpen your horns, dig your feet in, and no matter who it is, no matter who they are, what title they have, what resume they think they have, what DD-214 they think they have, it doesn't matter. When it's a specific operation, strategic plan, if they don't know that plan, if they don't know those laws, if they don't know those orders, so what? There's no such thing as a midterm rally. Everything President Trump was doing was a proclamation. He was using terms from the Law of War Manual to people who can't even name the three branches of government. It's proclamations. It doesn't matter what the people don't know. You'll learn. You'll learn it. You'll come to appreciate it. You'll love them even more. You'll love the military even more. And if you don't, you're probably an enemy of the Republic. You probably need deported too. If you can't appreciate high IQ, strategic plans with multiple layers to take out everything, but also while we're taking it out, we're plugging all the holes and the loopholes. If you can't appreciate that, you probably need deported too. There's no such thing as midterm rallies. Those would also have been a breach of national security and also federal law. Because if Joe would have been a sitting president, that would have been a breach. Every bit of this would have been a breach. Because President Trump was saying things that if everybody would have known what was going on, this thing could have been wrapped up even sooner in another kind of manner. But it could have also incited the wrong people had it not been a strategic plan and special operation. Because of what he was saying was nothing federal government related. Every aspect of it, every single aspect was all law war manual. So what is he doing using law war manual terms plus military, unconventional, and irregular warfare terms and also visuals to people who cannot even name the three branches of government? Then he met with the 12 foreign leaders 13 different times from April to December 2024, which would also been, again, a breach of national security and a breaking of the federal law, and also because it was in 2024, it was election year, it would have been a breach of his own election interference executive order with mass mercy. President Trump would have been breaking his own laws and orders had this not been. So when you go back and look at November the 4th, 2020, that was your election of 2020. Now let's pause there and let's go back again and reiterate. President Trump did not become the threat anywhere during 2017 to 2021, and then what you think of as a separation from 2025 to now. He didn't become the threat now, especially. And he wasn't a threat in 2017, 2018, 2019. He became the threat June the 16th, 2015. That's when he became the threat. Then it would have come into fruition for the ones who absolutely were blinded and didn't know what was going on, whoever those were, November the 8th, 2016. And then as he's president-elect, he would have really been a bigger threat because he was already saying things about Boeing. We're going to terminate this if they don't do this. We're going to do this if they don't do that. He'd already been telling what he was going to do in 2016 anyway on the campaign. So November the 8th, 2016, that would have come into fruition because then he became president-elect. That's when Obama, Hillary, Bill, Bush, all of them, they still could have revoked every single thing in that window, and there's not a thing President Trump could do as a president-elect. Did they do that? No, they did not. So you got to keep that in mind. And then you also have to keep in mind, again, that every single one of those things that I just read off, all have taken place and they had no revocation whatsoever. So it's what they didn't do. If President Trump is a dictator, a king, a Nazi, a communist, and all these things they assail of him, then why did they not, when they, quote unquote, had the power, how come they didn't do a single thing? Now watch this. This is another point, a new point that I've added. That's why I flipped it around and I used November the 4th, 2020, what you think of as the stolen election. Pause there for a moment. Pause that way of thinking. Pause that rhetoric. Just pause it for a moment and watch the timing of this and watch this. All right? If you want to go with the verbiage of stolen election, then you got to look at the timeline of it. President Trump told you on that campaign trail, we have it all, we've caught them all. No one could have caught them but me. It was after that December, when the electoral votes were supposed to be turned in to each of their states to get ready for January the 6th counting, it was that December 2020, December the 14th, that President Trump filed via the state of Texas, via the United States Supreme Court, versus 7 swing states of 2020. The swing states are where the cheating took place, ladies and gentlemen. That's where they flipped their votes. They flipped them in and they deleted or added because of Smartmatic Dominion systems, because it's computerized. How did they know all those years before the election what states were going to be quote-unquote battleground states, which are swing states? That is their corrupt system. Never before in the history, before President Donald John Trump, did you ever see the same swing states, the same battleground states in each election. The same 7 swing states of 2020 were the same 7 swing states of 2024. And President Trump won every single one of them, which means he what? He won his lawsuit. He didn't win just the states. He filed via United States Supreme Court. He filed via each swing state, which means if he won those same 7 swing states over here in 2024, he won the lawful suing of those states, which would be what? Collecting the data. So I'm going to tie 2 things in here. Why would quote-unquote Joe, first off, you got to know laws and orders. Military, federal. With orders in the military, such as your National Guard, your Title 32 and your Title 10, they can only be on duty for X amount of while. And then they have to be re-upped or replenished. All right, but because there's those little things in there, you got to know that. Like, oh, only 180 days or 100 in this days or this, 200, 240. There's certain different applications. Military orders are not continuation orders. It's not where, a direct order comes from this president and then the next president signs something and goes, I'm going to continue this. That ain't how they work. That's a commander-in-chief to the military, direct order. Especially a Title 10 call-up or a Title 32 presidential call-up. That's a direct order from the commander-in-chief, not the president. That's why it's key to know these terms and separations of powers. Even though it's the same person, it's a different command. It's a different structure. He's president of you, the people. He's commander-in-chief of the military. He's not your commander-in-chief. Now, that's not an argumentative point. I'm not going to argue with someone that says, that's my commander-in-chief. Yeah, it's really not, if you weren't military or veteran. But whatever, But President Trump gave a Title 32 order in 2018. And you can go look. You can get to Google. This is real simple. I've posted it before, but you can go to Google and you type in, were the National Guard active for the 2008, say it like that, 2008 election? No. 2012? No. And you could go back. No. Type in 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024. Yes. Well, it's the same Title 32 order because there's only one Title 32 order that put those National Guard, the cybersecurity teams, at the election polls. They can only be there on a federal order, which means presidential. Even though it's a Title 32, it's a presidential call-up. Means it's funded by the certain states that are doing it. Well, each election from 2018 to 2024 was different states, but they were cybersecurity teams. Why would quote-unquote Joe continue Executive Order 13848 with a national emergency for election interference, election integrity? They're the ones that have said that he cheated in 2024. Well, that wouldn't make any sense. Why would President Trump issue an executive order with a national emergency knowing it could backfire on him, which is what the deep state did all those years? No, he set the trap. He set the trap he baited them. This ain't an operation. This is part of all the bigger operation, though. There's only one Title 32 order in place for the National Guard election call-up. It's Title 32 in 2018. Bingo. Why would quote-unquote Joe have the National Guard at the election polls in 2022 and 2024? That makes no sense. They're there to capture any kind of seditious activity, any kind of activity that goes against election integrity, which is systems. That's the only reason you need them there. Bingo. So there's one portion. Now apply the fact of the 2020. Now look at the timing of it. They showed to you the people, we the people, but you the people. They showed to you from 2021 to 2025 that quote unquote Joe so he was a Democrat, control of the House and the Senate, Democrat, from 2021 to 2023. They didn't terminate a single thing. They didn't expose a single thing. They didn't terminate any executive order, period, meaning revoke it. They didn't terminate a single executive order with a national emergency. And they didn't do everything they could to erase with their old school, I'm going to use a term, it's probably not a term, but I like making up words myself, but erasability. They didn't erase anything that they could have while they were quote-unquote in power. Because the American people can't even name the three branches of government. And the American people claim they love President Trump and support him, but don't even know the language and the verbiage, so they could have destroyed every single piece of evidence and shredded it, especially from 21 to 23, with full Democrat control. They didn't terminate, abolish any single thing, erase it, dump it, trash it, anything. Make that make sense. If I'm crazy and I don't know what I'm talking about, even though the laws and orders most certainly back me up and support me, that's what they're there for. And everything you're witnessing and watching is a strategic plan, strategic operation, special operation, irregular, unconventional warfare. In Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, that clause is in there, regular and irregular forces. That's your unconventional warfare. That's your government exile, your puppet government. That's your clandestine, covert operations, secret military, special military. That's everything under that irregular. Then why didn't they terminate and abolish everything? Why didn't they erase everything? And here's the other thing. If it wasn't a strategic plan and special operation, then they would still have half the nation, the 50 percentile, who would defend them anyway, which would be their people, the Democrats and the liberals. The Democrats right now and the liberals, their party, they're okay with anything that's unethical. They're okay if they would dumped it, erased it. They back that. They actually verbally back that. If you get on X daily and look at all the liberals, they would back that. And then you'd have President Trump come out. They dumped it. They erased it. 50% of Americans would go, oh, you can't prove that. Even with proof, they would say that's not accurate. That's not true. You're just trying to smear this. So see, we would never climb out of this hole. We would never climb out if this was not a strategic plan, special operation with people who look good, who are actually bad, playing a role, and then people who are looking bad but actually are good playing a role. Because the only way they could ever flip this to really work for as many people as possible, to eliminate the drama, the propaganda, the politics, which is not a good word. It was designed to be a good word, but now it's not. Politics is your drama, the propaganda, the money laundering, all that. If we don't get back to a place where we are not living in fear, operating with fear, all this like just stress and anxiety and the turmoil and the arguing and the fussing and the bickering and the looking for the bad in people, always looking for the bad, and if you can't find it, they make it up. If there was not a strategic plan in place, and all this laws and orders of bullcrap that more than clearly outline what they do, we'd never get out of the hole. We would never get out of this, ever. And you would always be stressed. You would always be fearful. You would always be in anxiety, and your paychecks would always be crunched because you'd have the ulterior motives and the agendas back there always doing what they want with it. You'd never have a good guy or good gal who knows how to go in, mess up the system, take over the system, reflip the system, reset the system, and put it back on good terms for everybody. Because you'd always have half fighting against you no matter what, if this wasn't strategic for a reason. So when you look at the Democrats right now, on that side, the low-level hanging fruits are average everyday Americans, Democrats, liberals. Here they are. They're more worried about secret assets, which is what this is. The Democrats' global alliance, that's a secret asset. That's why they look the way they look. That's why they do retaliate. Even though I know this is all pre-planned and strategic, and what you're witnessing is the pre-planned disclosure, closure, and also them humiliating themselves, telling on themselves. But even from a normal standpoint, that's why they look the way they look. They're trying to protect their secret assets. When they say President Trump is a threat and he's a dick, yeah, exactly. You want them to say that because he has exposed their system. He has basically anybody who's been around a barn, when you tear a barn down or, ball falls down or whatever, you burn it, whatever, guess what happens? All the rats in there start spreading. They running everywhere. All right? Same concept. So he has taken down the Democratic Party, the global elitists, the swamp. Naturally, they're going to say that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's going to say what she's going to say because she's been exposed. But this is all pre-planned, but they're supposed to look like that. You're not supposed to follow them because, I liked her. She said this and that. She said it because she had you. But you didn't know what she was doing back here. And all these people they're exposing that were before, well, especially long before 2017, but especially before 2020, 2021, that. You got to look when people like me came on the scene. You got to look at those little things. You got to look at the timing and the placement of those. I'm nowhere up here. I'm not a congressman or woman, won't ever be. All right? Not that I know of. But if it were to be that, it would be in the clean out. We'd already think it would be cleaned out. But not up here. So all these people were already up there. They're all the names you've heard of. Same thing with a lot of these big podcasters, these big platforms. It's because they were already there. You already knew them. That don't mean they're good. The ones who say more, look more, do more on the front are normally the ones doing the bad things on the back. But your Democrats and liberals, they support, right now they look like they support the secret assets. They would support Ukraine more than they do the United States of America. Which is wild. The IEEPA, again. So what's going on in Ukraine? If Russia were the invaders of Ukraine, it wouldn't be United States and Russia at the peace table. And you wouldn't have Ukraine president, even though he's not real and he's acting, but even if you thought he was real, he wouldn't be saying, oh, no, I want this, I want this. Now, beggars can't be choosers, especially when you're the smaller country. Beggars can't be choosers. So when he refuses peace deals, which he has now multiple times, that means this is not a war. And by the way, again, the war didn't start in 2022. The Ukraine war started February 2014. It didn't start in 2022. That's why when President Trump says, I inherited this, if I would have been president, he's talking about way back in 2014. He's not talking about 2022. The war started on paper, documented 2014, which is even better because of the fact of what all took place in 2014, as I've done a Ukraine breakdown before, and I'll have to do that again in another podcast soon to do a Ukraine breakdown of what all took place in 2014 by Obama, Hillary, and the real Joe Biden. All right? So President Donald John Trump wouldn't have been needed unless 45-47 was and is a reset and clean out. That's the whole point of him. And here's why. If he was one of them, as some morons, you have to use the term morons there. I don't need to put a quarter in the swear jar. All right. But some morons out there claim that patriots who have jumped ship, Republicans, conservatives who have jumped ship, said he's just one of them and he's setting up everything and all this stuff. If he was one of them, nothing would change, except for history would still judge him as that. So then you go back to go, okay, he was already a billionaire. So he would leave a billionaire status just to get the name president? For what? To have to adjust his whole life security-wise? Heavy security? His family? His children? His grandchildren? He was already a billionaire. See, it's because a lot of people, you're not even a millionaire, and God love you, you're doing the best you can. But it's because you've never had that money that you can't realize that why someone would do something or not do something. It's like people who think that Elvis, they say, you know, the ones that think he couldn't be alive. Well, I can make a case why he is, strictly because of military, and then what Elvis had done with the federal badge that he received by Nixon. Elvis took that serious, and Elvis wanted to, see, when you don't do shows daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, when you're not performing, but Elvis was doing 3 full sets a day. The dude couldn't even leave his house. Even in the middle of the night, women camped out at the end of the gate at Graceland. 20, 30, 40 women sleeping at the gate. He couldn't even escape to ride his motorcycle in the middle of the wee hours of the morning. When you have no life, personal life, and you can't do just simple little things, that's no life. And then at that point, the perks don't outweigh the cons. Like the benefits don't outweigh the cons when you can't even do anything for yourself, period, that provides some form of stress-free environment, go hunting, hiking, fishing. Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, they couldn't even go to a foreign nation without someone knowing them, even trying to disguise as much as possible. So when you've never been in that position with that kind of money, it's hard to think like that. But you got to think like that. And it's the same thing with President Trump. History would judge him still. So why would he leave billionaire status just to become president and to have all this other stuff added to him? Sure, he had haters before, he had accusations before, but nothing like this. Come on, people. Give the military more justice for the operation and the plan, and give the man who put his face on it more credit than that. Then also, if he did it just strictly for his side, then history would still judge him for that. If he did it all just to benefit himself, benefit his family, benefit his kids, then history would still judge him on that. So however you want to slice the pie, if he's one of them, if he did it for himself, and even if he did it just for the Republicans, conservatives, patriots, and not thinking that, you know what, there may be some over here sitting on the fence. There may be some over here who want to become something part of bigger. something that's bigger than themselves, something bigger than party. And there's some Democrats who they're just waiting for the moment they feel like they won't be ridiculed for jumping. And it's not jumping like we're telling them. You're not jumping. You're becoming part of it, being American that you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be thinking for everybody as a whole. It's not supposed to be Republican, Democrat. That's what they're doing with the Mandami situation in New York. It's not supposed to be a Republican, Democrat thing. And what are people doing still? You're making it Republican, Democrat. You're still wallowing in the past. You're still making it Republican, Democrat. We're supposed to think different on some things. We can't think all the same way. And again, I'm going to post it later, but I'm going to go ahead and say it now. There's not the Democrats and liberals out there talking about, oh, we're back, baby, over a mayor. There's only been 2 mayors in New York history that went on to become governor. There's been, of New York. There's been 0 who went on to become president. So hold your horses out there, little tiny Tims. You're not as big as you think you are. You don't know much to do about anything, especially with a mayor. We're not talking about a governor here. We're talking about a mayor. It don't matter how big the city is. It don't have a thing to do with that. Chill your horses. If you knew that there was a plan in place that more than clearly outlines 45, 47, you know every bit of this is planned. It's all pre-planned. You don't think it's so? Then go read it, study it, comprehend it, and come back to me, boo-boo. You ain't going to come back because ain't no one done it yet. Because you can't. It is most definitely a pre-planned, strategic operation, special operation that outlines 45-47. So when you look at what they didn't do with the authority and power that they would have had if this was a real presidency from 2021 to 2025, but especially 21 to 23, if they would have had the power and authority as every other it's what they didn't do that shows you this most certainly is the military operation, the military government, the military occupation. And why else is President Trump going around saying all these terms that are from the Law War Manual that don't apply to any civilian whatsoever except for this is an operation? And then you look at the 2020 election that he's now talking about again. He's amping it up on his personal True Social. He's talking about the election integrity, election interference. They stole the election. They stole the election. They stole it. But if you'll make applicable to yourself, quit falling just for the, oh yeah, they stole it. If you'll go look at what they did not do from 21 to 25, they, even though it was all pre-planned and it's an operation, but for the people who don't know that, this is how it would look. They left all of your election integrity and your military, your Title 32 order, the National Guard, cybersecurity teams, they left the 2020 election open for the disclosure to the people because they have National Guard out 2022, 2024. Which means it's still what? That Title 32 from way back here in 2018, if the same National Guard cybersecurity teams are active for this past November, last November's election, that means it's prevalent. That means it's current. That means it's priority. That means that someone's still receiving a command. And because it's National Guard, and because it's presidential, it's coming straight from whose mouth? The Commander-in-Chief. Any way you slice the pie, it tastes good, don't it? 45-47. Now, just for the cherry on top, Dick Cheney, traitor. Daughter's a traitor. Whole family probably is. but we'll let history judge the rest of their family. But old Dick and Liz are definitely traitors. And if you knew Title IV flag code, you would know that you also witnessed part of the operation, because they showed Dick Cheney's casket wrapped in a United States flag walking up the steps of the chapel. Then it showed a cloth put over the flag. Title IV flag code. The United States of American flag is never covered up. Ever. No matter who it is. Plus, the cloth that they put over it was some religious form of cloth. It was wrinkled. Traitor. And if you think military regulations and customs are hogwash and bullcrap, then you're hogwash and bullcrap. You need to be deported. Military laws, military orders, military strategies, military tactics, military regulations, and military customs are not conspiracy theories. And anyone who puts my name with other names out there and calls it conspiracy, they absolutely don't know what they're talking about. I've seen my name and people saying, "Oh, all these people are nothing but You clearly don't know anything about military. You don't know anything about the oath, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is in our oath, Title 10, Section 502. I will obey the orders of the President and the officers appointed over me according to what? Regulations in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is Title 10, Chapter 47. That is your Uniform Code of Military Justice. That is military law. I mean, you can't have one portion without the other. You can't light one portion without the other. If that were the case, it should have been what? Abolished. So why didn't quote-unquote Joe, the hoe, and the hoettes, and also Obama, if you thought he was back there, why didn't they abolish one single thing in law while they have full authority and power if they had that? They didn't have that. But that's what you have to ask your friends and family who are arguing with you Thursday at Thanksgiving. If you have to ruin Thanksgiving, do it. If they want to argue something stupid, say, "Look, I'm not going to sit here and have this with you." All right? Just answer me this simple thing. If quote-unquote Joe, the hoe, the hoettes, and Obama, Michelle, Big Mike, all of them back there pulling strings, well, why didn't they revoke one single executive order by the man they call a king, a dictator, a threat, a Nazi, a communist, a pedophile? Why didn't they do one single thing? If President Trump was a threat to them, you tell them, hey, he was a threat when he rolled down the escalator June 16, 2015. That was 4 years before Epstein, quote-unquote, killed himself. The person who would have had the greatest leverage on President Trump would have been Epstein himself. Especially if he thought his old buddy, old pal, was becoming the President of the United States of America. He'd have had the greatest leverage. His first run-in with the law was 2005. 2005. So from 2005 to 2016, nothing. From 2021 to 2025, if President Trump was a dictator, a threat, a communist, a Nazi, and everything else, then he was the threat June the 16th, 2015. So why didn't Joe, the hoe, the hoettes, Obama, Romney, Ryan, Bush, Pelosi, Schiff, Schumer, Comey, all of them, why didn't they throw the book on President Trump lawfully? They could have done it lawfully. Why didn't they? Again, they had displayed to the public that Joe was a Democrat, had full House and Senate controlled Democrat from 2021 to 2023. And they didn't do a single thing lawfully with the authority and power that every other administration, president, and Congress has power and authority over. They didn't terminate a single tariff from 2021 to 2025. Not one single Clinton, Bush 1, Bush 2, Clinton, Obama appointed judge tried to block a single tariff from 2021 to 2025. But the tariffs are a threat. Now they want to say the tariffs are a threat and they're adding all kinds of money to your pocketbook. But they didn't not one single tariff that was put into place in 2018 was blocked from 21 to 2025. Not one single Democratic judge tried to block one from 21 to 25. But especially from 21 to 23, with full Democrat everything, they didn't abolish anything, they didn't terminate anything, they didn't revoke anything. Just to hand President Trump all those executive orders back, all those open Title 10, all those open Title 32 military orders that don't continue, which shows you that President Trump never left, but for the sake of argument, for people who just want to think that way, which is the wrong way of thinking, but for the sake of 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that are deporting migrants, enforcing DOJ, taking the Panama Canal back, terminating mainstream media contracts and organizations, and then some. Come on, people. Come on, people. So that's what you tell your friends and your family, you know. That's why you be the bull on the hill, baby. Dig your hoofs into the ground. Stand your ground, sharpen them horns, and give them the horns if you got to. You may not have to, but if you have to, give them the horns, baby. Just always remember, you mess with the bull, you get the horns. They call you crazy and all these other things, let them. They're ignorant. I'd rather be called crazy than ignorant. I'd rather be called crazy than stupid. I'd rather be called crazy than a moron. And if they don't like the word stupid, ignorant, and moron, then tell them stop acting like it. Stop arguing with straight up laws and orders and principles. Say the whole reason we're here is because of laws and orders. Laws and orders work on all grounds. If we didn't have them, it would be chaos. So you say the only reason we're here right now is because of laws and orders, but there's a strategic plan in place, there's a special operation in place. It's for everybody. You're choosing to make it Republican, Democrat. You're choosing to keep it in the past. You're choosing to keep it swampy. Not me. That's what you tell them. You can't argue with it when you see it. Once you read, study, comprehend the 45-47, you can't unsee it, you can't unread it, and you can't unknow it. But when you apply that in that regards, from 2021 to 2025, all those things, it's what they didn't do. That more than shows that it's a military occupation, that President Trump has told you we're an occupied country. That's straight out of the Law of War Manual. Occupied territory. The mainstream media have used terms like capitulation and puppet government and exile. Those are all Law of War Manual. Puppet government, occupied country, military occupation. So President Trump lawfully is using the war and national defense on our own nation. And the other thing about the Aliens Act, really quick, about the Ukraine situation, like the Democrats and the liberals, they'll defend another nation. They're more worried about another nation being invaded than our own nation being invaded. Think about it. Think about the terminology. They can identify an invasion somewhere else, but they can't identify an invasion on their own turf. Imagine that. They would have you slaughtered. They would have you in real prison camps because they can't even identify enemies. So the more of you who read, study, comprehend what you're supposed to know what you're supposed to know, walk around with the same passion, the same desire, the same fire for knowing what you're supposed to know, then you'll have the skill sets to be able to identify it. Not just know it here, but identify it for whenever it does rise up again in the future, which God forbid that happens, and it won't for a long time because of what's taking place. Good guys, good gals, we're all in control. But for the sake of, you still can't be lazy. You still can't go, oh, it's cleaned out, we're good. Nah, you need to know what I know, the best of your ability. Every single person needs to know this, have it there, then pass it down to your children, and their children. It should be taught at every dinner table in America. We need to have those again. No matter what your table looks like, if it's a counter, if it looks like a little bar with a whatever it is, but we need to have those again. So you can't just sit back, relax either. We got to maintain and sustain this. That's where the real fight comes in, is maintaining and sustaining. But history's going to show for it. History's going to account for that dash. And what they got planned in the future for everybody, what they have planned for the unveiling and also your judgment and your justice and all that, that's going to come. Because that's also what makes President Donald John Trump different. If there wasn't justice and punishment, nothing would ever change. You have to reset the standard of this is what happens for treason. This is what happens for crimes against humanity. This is what happens for money laundering. This is what happens for seditious activity. This is what But they had to build this narrative, right? And it's not a narrative the wrong way, but they had to build this, and they had to go through all this for a reason. Every aspect's been a clean out. Every aspect's been a reset, but it's also been a plug-in of the holes and the loopholes all on the way. That way we have a nice, clean system on the other side that President Trump said January the 20th, 2017, we're taking the power out of D.C. and giving it back to you, the people. But you, the people, can't be given this until you know what the heck's going on. And when too many people are still focused on an Epstein, release the files. Do you realize that no one's going to be happy? The Democrats are already saying that stuff's been erased. That when you are feeding on something that has a no happiness result, do you see what you're putting your time and energy on? Which means you have to catch people in the act. If you're a lady out there and you've been abused verbally, sexually, you need to tell it right then. You don't wait 10, 20, 30, 40 years, because then it looks like you have an agenda and a motive, especially if that person becomes famous with a lot of money. You do it then and there. You have the guts and the integrity to do it then and there. So, again, everybody needs to know this stuff. You need to know the laws, know the orders, know your rights, know your civil responsibilities, your civil duties, your civil, not just your rights, but your civil authorities, responsibilities, and duties. Everybody has a weight to pull. And we have to re-educate America and then educate the others. Re-educate some, educate the others, but educate the children and the future that's coming up, because they will be the future. When if you're 50 right now, you're 40, you're 50, whatever you are, when we all get in our old age into nursing homes, we want to make sure that those youngsters that are young now, that are coming up, that they're going to know what to do and how to pay it forward. Just like the Native Americans, 7 generations out. We're supposed to teach these people to always think forward, think forward, think forward. Too many people are thinking in the past, living in the past, wallowing in the past. Because if Americans think that it's cool that the House Oversight Committee had to do this, waste time and money, even though they're under a continuity government, but in a real setting, if this would have been a real setting, not strategic, not to show that most of these people yelling for it on the Democrat side are actually tied into Epstein, if this weren't that and this was a normal setting, and people were wanting Congress to be dealing with something like this, It shows you know nothing about the priorities of this nation. It means you're drama fed and propaganda fed. It means you're nothing but pigs in mud. You just want to wallow in that don't matter. Because the principle goes back to, if Epstein had anything on President Trump, he would have had it way back yonder. And the fact that the Democrats, if they were in control, which they weren't, and it's all a strategic, pre-planned operation, but if they would have been, the principle would be this, is why didn't they do anything about it? They have, if they would have been in control, they'd have had a full authority and a power, and they didn't do a thing. So it's what they didn't do that shows you that the whole thing is a strategic plan, strategic operation, special operation, and then the laws back that. Occupied territory, puppet government, government in exile, white flag of surrender, capitulation. Those are all terms found in the Law War Manual. They are not government terms. So why does President Trump still use those to this day? Why? Because we're still in operation. We're in a partial continuity government, which means we're on the ladder. We're moving out of it. And then the partial continuity government will mean that reconstitution is partially done. So, it's all beautiful, baby. It's all beautiful. All you got to do is be the bull on the hill. I might need to retitle this whole podcast, The Bull on the Hill. Be the bull on the hill. Don't worry about all the others down there wallowing in the mud, in the muck, and everything else. They're meant to do that because they don't know what you know. They don't know what they're supposed to know. They're not pulling their roles, their responsibilities, their duties. But the laws and the orders most certainly outline what they outline. And again, you know, they're number one bestsellers for a reason. Part 1, Part 2. Part 1 is little. It dabs your feet into it. And then Part 2 is your special operations, heavy irregular warfare, heavy asymmetrical warfare. That's what that's for. All right, you got to learn those things if you care. And this bad boy right here is flying off the shelf too. This thing is selling like Krispy Kreme donuts in front of a Weight Watchers event. This is my new book, and it's the first book in U.S. history. It's a foundational book, and it does all these things. It tells you the brief history, the Revolutionary War, military establishment, Common Sense by Thomas Paine, Declaration of Independence, Articles of the Confederation, Treaty of Paris, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, March 4, 1789, the Bill of Rights, Marlborough versus Madison, 1803, Insurrection Act, 1807, War of 1812, Articles 1, 2, and 3, four ways military pairs with federal, Statute of 1845, Ratification Process, National Security Act of 1947, Department of War, NDAA, White House Military Office, Emergency Alert System, Order of Successions, Executive Departments, NAR, Presidential Records Act, 20th Amendment, Title 10, Title 32, Title 50, Title 10 versus Title 50, the difference. War Powers Act of 1973, Law War Manual, National Security Strategy, National Defense Strategy, National Military Strategy, Courts Martial, Military Tribunals, the Tribunals versus a Court Martial, the difference. Department of Defense Directives and Department of Defense Instructions, which are still titled that, not Department of War yet. All right, Military Justice Act of 2016, Writ of Habeas Corpus, 1798, Aliens and Seditions Act, Martial Law, Posse Comitatus Act, Joint Publication 3-57, Ironclad Oath, Article 4, Federalist Papers, 10 and 14, Types of Warfare. Then it has another chapter, Irregular Warfare, Special Operations, Unconventional Warfare, all the oaths that the military took from 1789 to present day, 20th Amendment, 22nd Amendment, Title 47, Section 606, the Gettysburg Address, and a bunch of quotes, etc. All in one location. No pictures, all text. This will help future generations, again, the younger generations, have a foundation in all of history in one location. All right. This is why it's called the Midnight Rider Bible. And no sacrilegious whatsoever. Because, again, this is all your origin and the history of the United States of America in one location. How come they've never done this before? How come our schools never did this? How come? All right, so yeah, it's selling like hotcakes. And if you complain about price, then sucks to suck. But to print this book right here, it ain't cheap. If you hadn't noticed, print has become a little bit more obsolete these days, just because people like things on what? The phone. But people have all access 24/7 to the phone with Google that's pretty accurate when you know what to look up, but people don't know what to look. Certain types of questions, certain types of things that jog the mind, that supply the mind with things you're supposed to. So we have our phone 24/7. People don't use it. They're too busy looking up when Yellowstone is putting out a new show, or Ozark, or whatever it is, right? Too busy looking up football scores and things of that nature that don't matter right now during this time period of life, which is the reset. And it's very important that we re-educate and educate Americans and future Americans. For the people who do come in here lawfully the correct way, they still have to be educated. Woo! So anyway, yep. That is probably going to be called Bull on the Hill now versus Why Do You Love President Trump? So, again, there's only one reason why he's here. Only one reason why he's different, why he has a unique name, a unique face. It's because there's unique laws and orders that also support that. So, all you patriots out there, you just got to hang tight. You got to keep fighting the good fight in your family and your friend base. Don't worry about the names they call you. Don't worry. Don't even care about what they may think about you, even when you walk away. Be the bull on the hill. Act like a bull, walk like a bull, and talk like a bull. All right? And if they call it bull, the other word, let them. It's all going to play out. It's all going to show that. It's all going to be outlined. It already is outlined, but the finale, the cherry on top, all that's going to happen. Everything's a build-up process. I personally, and everybody else that I know, hates that it had to play out this way. In one way, I don't hate it, but I do in another because, again, I don't like, personally, when I hear stuff like he's just dragging this out. I'm not dragging anything out. The laws and the orders show this. All right? It's not about me either. So a lot of these people make it more about me than it is. It's not about me. I'm just a veteran keeping my oath, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I got an extra position given to me that I obliged to and felt an honor to take and be asked to do, and I did it. So here we are. And I love it. So I also personally love the fact that, hey, I'm in a normal setting. I get to do this like this. I'm a real person. I'm genuine. If you've ever met me, you know that. It's hard to get me to shut up. It's hard to pull me away, especially when I have obligations I have to do. But at the same time, no subscriptions, all right? And then also no donation links posted anywhere. Hey, donate to this. Hey, this. No, it's all my time, my dime, but also because of certain tasks that I was tasked to do in the right kind of context, right? My pages are not monetized, all right? They can't be, first off, because they've been banned so many times, but not monetized, all right? So the only way you really can support me are the books and apparel. But, I was a country music artist, still am, but I had Billboard hits before all this. So naturally, I already had apparel. But I haven't even sold any of my apparel. I haven't even put up any of my apparel from my dear Jonhson country. So, I have truly sacrificed in the right kind of manners. And people who know me know that I don't do anything like that. I don't have endorsements. I also don't sponsor certain people. I have posted a couple of books up that I personally have read myself, and or like Lieutenant Colonel Bosey. I think I have his book right here, right? So, which I think everybody should read, things like that. But other than that, everything, I don't share people's posts. Everything's straight from me, .gov, .mil sites, and then taking what the good Lord gave me here and what the good Lord gave me here, and then the badge I have. Other than that, put it all together, it cannot be debunked. It can't be. But the only way that you can know that is to read it, study it, and seek to comprehend it yourself. That's the only way. But I can assure you one more time, shout out to all the ladies again. Shout out to the women, real women. Real women who don't even have to worry about the definition of a woman because you just are. All that crap is deep state nonsense, right? But women, guys, women, 85% of the almost, I think it's 900 whatever something thousand that follow me are women. When a woman is told that's a fact, especially out of a man's mouth, those are what they call game over words. Meaning, it's game over if what you said out of your moving lips, pushed out by the lungs that you have, that air that pushes out that says the word facts on that tongue, and these lips that form it. When a woman hears that's a fact from a man, a male, any kind of male, but guess what a woman's going to do? That woman is going to go check it from top to bottom, bottom to top, front, backwards, diagonal, side to side. And they're going to find out what you're saying, especially if it has anything that can be referenced. Meaning it's got a link to it. It's got a word to it. It's got a sentence to it. It's got a paragraph to it. It's got multiple paragraphs. Here where I'm going here. Word for word. Paragraph for paragraph. Document for document. Link for link. Especially if it's a .gov.mil. And women are a puzzle. Men, you already know that. You already know when you get in the truck, you try to take them to dinner. You say, where do you want? No, you don't do that. You just say, hey, we're going to go to your favorite restaurant. And she goes, which one? You just drive to one. Like you know, they're a puzzle already. They ain't meant to be figured out. That's why God called them a woman. They ain't meant to be figured out. When they're mad, you let them be mad. When they're sad, you try to comfort them. You go buy things that you think are stupid. Flowers. You know they're going to die. Go buy them anyway. All right? If she don't like flowers, you'll learn that pretty quick. She won't like it, but she's going to like something that you think stupid. Go buy that stupid thing. Because whatever's stupid to you ain't to her. That's a woman. They're called a puzzle for a reason. Women are a puzzle, therefore they love puzzles. And when you say something out of your mouth that is a puzzle, they can go take the puzzle, put the puzzle together. And they're going to know it better than you know it. And you can be the highest level operator out there. The woman's going to be more efficient and effective than you. She may not be in that position, but she's going to be effective and efficient because that's why God made a woman. That's why women hold men to a standard that most men can't make, but you should want to, because that's also where we've been slacking in the world. Men, y'all got to start acting more like men. Because when you do certain things out there, men, you make it worse on other real, true, genuine, authentic men who really are men. But because men have let the guard down so much, and you act like a bunch of morons, you act spoiled and you act all lazy and all these other things. So kudos to the women, kudos to the ladies, kudos to all the women patriots, lady patriots, because again, men, I wouldn't have a platform if it weren't for women. They have gone and read. They have gone and studied. It's all there. If it weren't there, I wouldn't be here. So quit talking down to you ladies. Step up to the plate, guys. It's time for it. Now this ain't no war on the ground yet. It ain't that. It ain't gonna be that. It wasn't gonna be that because this was a strategic chessboard. Capture, control, reset, flip it, take it away. It's a takeaway party. The deep state ain't as smart as they think they were. They've been abolished. They've been eliminated. They've been erased. But it is there. But if you thought it wasn't there, the only way that you could ever really debunk something, you can't take one. You got to take every aspect of what I've talked about, the laws and the orders, plus the visuals, collectively as a whole, and show the people how it isn't that as a whole. Because it most certainly is that as a whole. So, kudos to all the patriots out there. It's not all women. There's a lot of men out there who are patriots. I get messages, emails. I thank you for your messages and emails. We try to get to as many as possible. I do have now a team that helps me because we have so many messages, have so many emails. So try to get to everybody as possible. But I have a lot of emails from veterans all over the world who live all over the world due to family, things of that nature. But then also I receive messages from all over the world as well. And there's so many patriots out there who have become a part of humanity and truly know this is not partisanship whatsoever. This is straight up, humanity's sake. So it's awesome. It's awesome to see what's going on. There's so many people who are waking up, who are applying and making it applicable with your friends, your family, your friend groups, your family groups, the small groups. I started with 9 people watching me. 9 people watching. And look what 9 people did. So, yes, the Bible talks about where 2 or 3 are gathered. 2's better than 1. 3's better than 2. You get it, right? So, but you don't need always the majority of population. You need the small groups that build from the bottom up. That's how we build back. That's how we maintain. That's how we sustain. But it's got to be on the principles and the ideologies of our foundation. And that starts with knowing the terms, the definitions, and then you can make it applicable to the paragraphs. Then you can make it applicable to the documents, the orders, and then how they can join, how they operate together and separately, but then how, in this time period, it forms the blueprint of this man right here. He put his name and face on it. All right? And again, I signed my contracts for these books right here. I signed my contract at Trump International a month before he put that on the ball cap. And that's why he showed, again, the Aliens and Seditions Act. He knows who's loyal. He knows who's fighting the good fight. I had just done a podcast this Thursday, sitting signing my books, doing the processes of my books, talking about the Aliens Act. Then President Trump follows back up with it when it was ruled on way back here. He knows, ladies and gentlemen, he knows. He's high IQ, 5D chess player. He knows who is and who isn't. He knows that I sat at his table. He knows that I sat in his chair. The only person allowed to sit in his chair at his reserve table at his private golf course to sign the publicity contract to write those books. He knows. He knows. And there's a bunch of people out there working for President Trump, a bunch of people working for the military, a bunch of people working internal, external. There's a bunch of people in multiple spots. But he still knows. He is that genius level. He is that high IQ. He can compartmentalize, multitask that much. He's just genius. All right? A lot of people think that I am, I guess, because I can retain so much, but he is way up there. All right? So, just letting you know and reminder. So, anyway, I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to share that with my family this week. I hope you do as yours as well. And hope you don't get in arguments. I don't promote that, but I just thought it'd be humorous in another kind of way. But I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. And, for the humor's sake, as quote-unquote Joe Biden would say, happy 4th of July. Nah, happy Thanksgiving.